all right. إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا. All right, people, what is going down? It is Mufti's Meetup. You're doing it, people. You're doing it. I thought, let me do a live at these random ungodly hours. See who is awake around the globe, people. What is going down? So, all right. Some vampire greetings, people. Vampire greetings. I've shared. All right, let me just go to the comments. People, you're doing it. Zayed, all right. Hussein, Inaya, as always, you're doing it. You're doing it. Mufti, can you talk about Wittgenstein? Wittgenstein was a legend. He was an absolute legend. I'll share the Andra, you're doing it. Listening to you as I'm working out. All right. Oh, get that workout in there, people. Get it in there. Oh, that's it. You're doing it. The Maharaja of England. Swagatam. Swagatam. This is the link if you want to join in. Right. Let me just share it. Where is it gone? Big. All right. ¿Dónde está? There it is. People, if you want to join in, there you go. You can meanwhile click like, click share. You can spread the love, spread the fitan and fasad, people. So what is going down, huh? Somebody said, Mufti, can you do a masala on the Mr. Hariram serial kisser again? Serial kisser Hariram, the stud. Right, Wiz True, you're doing it. Right, people. All right, much love. I'm good. Shukran. I'm shukran. Right. Claire Jones, always a pleasure to see you online. You're doing it. Right. What is Mufti? I want to talk to you. Capital D. Right. Oh, this was absolutely epic. I was sharing it on my I shared it on my Insta story, telling people that they really need to watch it. It was absolutely amazing. The Joe Rogan discussion with Brian and Graham Hancock on psychedelics. You've got the whole the Eleusinian mysteries, and it's just amazing, absolutely amazing, people. Let me see. First and foremost, we have Mufti Abu Alpha.
I'm back.
Assalamu alaikum. All right, you're doing it. Abu Alpha.
I got a question.
How are you keeping?
I'm doing good.
Go for it. Fire away.
All right, so you know how Imam Ghazali and Ibn Rushd had like a kind of like a beef. Like, whose side would you take in that like discussion or like that disagreement?
Well, that's a fascinating question, actually, because you see, in that discussion, I would side with Ibn Rushd.
I knew that was coming. See, I knew.
Yeah, see, look at that. Allah.
Yeah, but
right
why?
Now,
why?
Because I think that, you see, I feel that, okay, just to give a backdrop to people who are unfamiliar with this, what it is that Imam Ghazali, he writes a book called, and the book is the kind of
I read some of it. Yeah. Incoherence
and
of the philosophers.
the book is it's a summary of his vent. This is venting out, lashing out against philosophers. It's called the Hafatul Falasifa, the kind of collapse, or it's translated as the incoherence, or this kind of collapse of the philosophers. And in it, he's basically saying that he has arrived at the conclusion that the philosophers, for the most part, are kuffar, are disbelievers, based on, and he summarizes it into certain key aspects. One, they don't believe in the kind of resurrection of the bodies, and they don't believe in, and he goes on, they believe in the pre-eternality of the world, and so on and so forth. But this whole book, it obviously shocks the world. Why does it shock the world? It doesn't shock the world because Ghazali's writing is so compelling. That's not why it shocks the world. Why it shocks the world is because Ghazali is the one who's writing it. You see, it's a bit like you see, when somebody who represents a particular field comes out and says something that's very anti that field, that's the shocking factor. It's not the content of what he had to say that was so compelling. It's a bit like how you have, this is a tiny example, but it's like recently you've had these kind of scandalous things with Sheikh Yasser Qadhi.
Yeah.
Now, in all honesty, it's not, Yasser Qadhi hasn't said anything that hasn't been said before. Obviously, he did it in a poor way, but he's not saying anything that's new. But the only thing is, because who he is to all these people, when he comes out and says these things, that is shocking to the people. It's not so much the content. Like, that same thing could be said by somebody else and it wouldn't really mean anything. It's just the fact that, because they hold him to be this person, and they held Imam Ghazali to be this philosopher. So when he comes out and says, philosophy is it's a waste, it's not only a waste of time, it's disastrous. This shocks people, that what the hell, you are the philosopher, so you saying this is scary. And you see, why I don't side with Ghazali is because you have to understand that this expression of Ghazali was not born in a vacuum. There was a backdrop to it. And the backdrop to this was that Ghazali was going through a faith crisis. He was going through an existential crisis. And that's fine. I mean, everybody, not everybody, but many people go through these crises of faith and crises of an existential reality. Who are we? What are we doing here? What is the nature of the self? Is any of this even true? Is Islam true? And I'm not making this up. I mean, Ghazali in his own book, Al-Munqidh min al-Dalal, explains this, that I went through this crisis where I felt, is anything actually real? Is my faith real? Is this, is that? But this crisis he's having is almost 1,000 years ago from today. Now, he felt that he couldn't answer his own questions. And the crisis that, the questions that you from philosophy throw at yourself, you need to answer them, or you need answers for them. Now, his knowledge, and plus you have to remember, in that day and age, al-hikmah, which was translated today, we translate it as wisdom. Back then, it meant science. Because al-hikmah was your observation of the world, which is science today. I mean, even science wasn't called science a couple of 100 years ago. I mean, they called it different things, whether it was naturalism or studying nature or they didn't call it science. So his al-hikmah, his science of the day and age, could only take him so far. his own understanding, his own. So what he felt that, I mean, he did a great job of trying to get so far, but he felt that he was just drowning. And the only way to escape this was to jettison rationale altogether and cling on to this deep mysticism of just going deep into this sense of rahbaniya, this kind of hermetic, becoming a kind of hermit, like I give up, a monk, this kind of like monastic lifestyle. And so that's what he did. He rejects everything, goes off into a desert, lives in a desert for years, and he writes this book, this philosophy is kufar and so on. But really that comes from, it's just him venting because he's frustrated with this whole philosophy. He feels it raises so many questions that you can't answer. But I feel definitely today we've moved on so much. Like science today has, it's gone at a quantum level. If he had things like quantum physics available to him, he would not have struggled as much as he did struggle. But it's just that the knowledge of the world in his day and age could only go so far. I'm not saying we have cracked it, but we have definitely gone farther than he went. Obviously, I mean, he contributed to this as well. Like people, it's like Newton saying, if I see so far, it's only because I stand on the shoulders of giants. So Ibn Rushd, a century later, writes a refutation against him, saying, look, what are you even talking about? Not all these philosophers believe this. You're saying Aristotle believes this, but that's not even true. That's actually Plato. And he kind of corrects him and says all these things.
Yeah, it was like
about
a response to like each of his points. Yeah, or some of it.
Yeah. But cool. I think that was an awesome question, man. You're doing it. Much appreciated.
I don't want to take up any more people's time. So
cool, man. Speak soon. Stay blessed. Much love. Assalamu alaikum. All right. What a question, people. What a question. All right. Look at this. Redo your shahada, everyone, you're lost, and it's like redo the shahada, Oh, this is why, sibling marriages are haram. Because the DNA not healthy, this one. chromosomal catastrophe. All right, so we have here, who do we have? Shadman Shan. Oh, assalamu alaikum, Shadman.
Bro. Good, Orba, how are you?
Right, I'm good. How are you doing? Where are you joining us from?
I'm from Facebook, actually. Yeah, joining from the Facebook.
Yeah, I know, but Facebook. But we're in the globe.
Oh, I'm from Canada, Toronto, Canada. Yeah.
You're doing it, Shadman. You're doing it. I mean, it's an absolute pleasure. I see your comments all the time. I see you're kind of supportive. All, whether it's your likes, shares, everything. I often see it. So shukran. Was there something you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, I mean, all I gotta do, man, is like I gotta thank you a lot, man. I was struggling with my deen last year. I was at a Christian camp or whatnot, right? So a lot of the Christians or whatnot were trying to like bug me in or whatnot, start insulting the Prophet. They'll like get a go at me or whatnot, right? But alhamdulillah, I found you, right? I saw the age of Aisha radiallahu anha video. With that, wallahi, man, I love you for the sake of Allah. Just because of that video, I'm able to sort of like defend my faith. I'm happy to be an actual Muslim. You know what I mean? So I just gotta thank you, man. And like I'm just happy to be on this. I'm just like
shukran, man. Right back at you, man. Much love. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, voicing this, because this, like yourself. I mean, you seem incredibly young.
Yeah,
I'm don't mind me asking.
I'm still learning.
All right, but you are exemplifying an archetype of young people. So there's many young people like you that would be going through this kind of a struggle, because they're reading something, they're hearing, it's just the other day somebody sent me a clip on Instagram or something, and it was somebody preaching, saying, it may have been Ali Daw, I can't remember who it was, I don't want to say in case I get it wrong, but it was somebody preaching, and they're having a kind of like a heated discussion with a non-Muslim, and they're saying that, look, we are transparent. We are transparent about our deen. See, we openly say the Prophet married a 6-year-old. There you go. We're not hiding it. If we want to hide it, and this reverse reactionary bravado effect that we're seeing, you see, what they don't realize is it is snatching the deen away from the hearts of so many people, because it is, I understand for these people in that mode of argument, they feel that, this is somehow, we're owning it. Like, there's this kind of bravado about it. But it really isn't our place to do these kind of things, because you've got khabru ahad, you've got these isolated narrations, which not me, not you, not Imam Malik, from the Atba' Tabi'een is telling you. He says, Inna al-wahida an wahid, this one-on-one, yanzi'u ad-din min bayni yadayk, it will snatch the deen from in front of you. So, so shukran for you voicing your, your thoughts as well. I dearly appreciate it, man.
Don't mind me asking, I just have
of course,
three questions, if it's possible, right?
Go for it, Shadman.
So, okay. The first one is, so a lot of the Christians, right? So you have verses like Surah 10, verse 94, right? Surah Yunus, where it says, وَلَا فَإِن كُنْتَ فِي شَكٍّ مِّمَّا أَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ فَاسْأَلِ الَّذِينَ يَقْرُؤُونَ الْكِتَابَ مِن قَبْلِكَ, right? And then they bring like verse like Surah 5, verse 68, right? Where they say like, if you are in doubt in that which we have revealed unto you, refer to the people of the book, for they have been reading the scriptures before you, right? So I just want to know, from what do you think what type of gospel do you think that the Christians were using during the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon his time? Because you have Waraka bin Nawfal, you have people like Salman al-Farsi, you have Kabul Ahbar, right? You have Abdullah bin Salam, you have a lot of the early like converts to Islam, you know what I mean? So what type of Torah or gospel would you think they had? Because I know there's different gospel, like if you go to like Syria or whatnot, they might have been using the infancy gospel of Thomas, right? Some of them had the gospel of the Ebionites, exactly. Yeah. So what type of gospel do you think they used?
I mean, right? Okay, these are really good questions. I definitely think some of these gospels that what are today termed the apocryphal kind of gospels, like the infancy gospels of St. Thomas, and you've got others as well, especially within the Syriac. Some claims have been made that these were still around amongst the Middle Eastern Christians, and they may have been, but I definitely feel that the gospels they have today were there. These were definitely there. Whether the apocryphal were there, I feel the apocryphal would have existed in certain pockets of communities, whether they were deemed authoritative in that day and age. I don't know, to be honest with you. It could have been amongst certain pockets of Christians. They may have been deemed authoritative, but I feel that the gospels that they have today were definitely there. And these gospels, they were definitely leaning in on these and taking inspiration from them. But when Allah is saying things like, look, if you are in doubt, ask the people who went before you. That is within particular contexts, within particular now. So it's not that, you see, so it's not saying things like, I don't know, like, let's say every single thing about Islam, ask the people of the book. It's not saying that. So there will be things. So, for example, in none of the Gospels, there not a single one of the canonical Gospels that we have will Jesus say that he is God.
Yeah, exactly. They'll use like John 8:58, right, where it says like Prina Bram Genestai Guaini, right, where it says before Abraham was I am. From all the Christians that I've talked to, that's the only one they use, but they can't get a clear-cut verse where it says
but unequivocally, very clearly. I don't mean I don't mean in a sense that can you infer. Sometimes, people saying things like, oh, none shall reach the Father except through me, and so on. Oh, they're going to infer a certain kind of a certain kind of God headship. But what I'm saying is unequivocally, where Jesus is saying, look, I am God. Like this, it isn't anywhere. Now, these kind of things, Allah is saying that, look, this thing that God is one, you can ask them. You can, or the fact that there is revelation, or the fact that it depends the context in which the people of the book are being brought forward. Because you have to remember where revelation is coming down, there is, especially in Mecca, the Christians are being kind of like wedged in there, the Christians and the Jews, because the initial discourse is against the mushrikeen, the polytheists. Now, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is preaching some story, sometimes there's a mention of prior prophets. The Prophet is taking this Abrahamic path. So what was happening is many of the people of Mecca were bringing down people of the book, bringing down rabbis and Christians to debate the Prophet, to kind of set him up, pit him against them. And they had connections with so many of the people, because you have to remember that the capital, the cultural capitals were in the Middle East. They were not in the Arabian Peninsula. They were in places like Hira was a cultural capital, Busra before. These kind of northern, these were like the cultural capitals. So the where you had the Ghassanids, where you had the Lakhmids, these people, many of them were Christian. Some may have been Jewish as well. Now, these people were being brought down to debate the Prophet. And at times, the mushrikeen are being told, look, why don't you then ask the people of the book? If this is what your thing is, go ask them. You're keen to ask them, ain't you? Ask them about this. And, and this is the context to these kind of verses, because occasionally they are being brought to have a debate with the Prophet.
It just, I don't know if it's gonna fit in. But just last two. I don't want to take up too much time, Rona, but the issue of apostasy killings, right? I know a lot of the Islamophobes love to like bring this up or whatnot. I mean, like it's like you read Deuteronomy chapter 13, right? The entire chapter talks about like apostasy.
I love how you're so well versed in the Bible.
Stuff. I've been debating Christians for a long time. That's like,
I mean, you're only 16. I don't know what a long. It's like, whoa, you're doing it, Shadman.
Thank you, shukran. I mean, like, the issue of like the apostasy killings, right, in Islam. You know how we generally see that. I believe that just like you, all the narrations are like they're pretty much a da'if, I would say as well. I mean, like they all come through Ikrimah, like who's like, there's a lot of like jar who made on him. You know what I mean? So. Like what do you think of the other narrations which come through like Qatada from Al-Hasan al-Basri, from like Anas, where it says like Man baddala dinahu faqtuluhu? You find them in like Nasa'i and the recent narrations. What do you think of those like apostasy killing narrations?
You see, this is the so this is the thing. You have to bring all of these in front of you. But right there, Qatada is a fine example. Qatada is a major mudallis. He's not just a mudallis. He's like from the kings of the mudallisin. Qatada has like something like over 200 kind of where there's statements about him where he's transmitted over 200 of these kind of narrations, and most likely only ever heard a small amount of them. But he's just kind of done tadlis and just gone, an fulan. So these ahadith, fine. I mean, let's take a look at the chains. We'll bring them and take a look at them. But often I quote the one in Bukhari because that's the one, Bukhari is
Ali
put up
people,
there.
this type
Yeah,
of
exactly. The one about Sayyidina Ali. But all of these, you see, you have to understand the context in which if this was the case, why don't we see it in the lifetime of the Prophet? Why don't we see it and in fact in the Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, you see this was a clear condition that they said, if a person leaves his deen, leaves Islam and comes back to us, he will be safe. You can't stop him. But if, one of us goes to you, you must return him. Here the Prophet agrees. And it's not just, I don't just mean agreeing for the treaty. It's the concept that it's the concept of saying, well, okay, there isn't a had for this. If this is such a major sin, in the sense that a major crime that requires this public retaliation, why is it not mentioned in the Quran? Why does the Quran apparently contradict it? It's only left for random khabru ahad. These kind of 1, 2, 3. Khabru ahad cannot take life. You can't, like, the sanctity of life is from the qat'iyat. You can't remove that sanctity even if you had a khabru ahad, even if you felt this chain was valid. But come on, you're going to overrule something qat'i by something dhanni. So this is look, this was political. It was something which Islam, it wasn't, Muslims weren't exclusive. Many cultures around the world were doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
If you left their faith, people would have killed you. Muslims were no different. They felt this, and then people, they back project these hadith. Oh, actually, I'm pretty sure I've heard something. And this is the thing. So you start to get these, and I'm not saying, you see, when people make up hadith, it's not that there's things like false memories as well. You see, people have to understand that they assume we live in this uber black and white world where, so if it's not sahih, then everybody that's like Qatada must be this evil person. A'mash must be this evil person who hates the Prophet and makes things up against him. That's not true. That's not true. Like, people mix up things. People sometimes they fabricate things unintentionally. It's called, this amazing studies done in forensic psychology on false memories, where people will assume things because they'll think, I'm pretty sure that is a hadith. I'm pretty sure I've heard that, and they haven't. There's actually, there's amazing studies, and I've cited this before. If you look into them, that will speak about people, this false memory test. And what you'll have is as part of an experiment, somebody will go to certain people and say that, look, I'd like to share these memories with you. I'd like you to talk about them. And in these cases, people have had, so let's say they've had prior exposure to the friends, and family of this particular person. So what they'll say is, I'd like to speak about 5 memories with you. And these are legitimate memories from childhood, except in these cases, one of them will be false. They will be completely made up. So, and there's a lot of research on this by, I think, Elizabeth Loftus has done a lot of research on this. So what they'll say is, for example, imagine you've got a legitimate memory. I'm going through, it's absolutely legitimate. But in between there, I make one up. I say, Shadman, tell us about, when you were 6 years old and you were left in the mall and you felt you were stranded. And what's interesting is the false memory, the one that the researcher has just made up. They've previously made it up. The person will recall it. And not only will they recall it, they will add so much detail, like sincerely. They'll say, yeah, absolutely. Let me tell you about that. What happened is I was by this shop and this happened. And this memory was fake. Like this did not happen. And it's amazing. They've looked into this about how witnesses sometimes can give false witness testimonies. So there's a whole science in this as part of forensic psychology. So people mistake things, and memory is a constructive. Another false thing that psychology has debunked now was people used to think memory is playback. It's like I've got this video and I'm playing it back to myself. This is memory. Psychology has debunked that. Memory is not a passive act. It's not like, memory is constructive. It's actually active. Every time you think of something, your brain, your mind reconstructs it. And now the interesting thing is you can inadvertently reconstruct it differently, or maybe a tiny amount of detail. You start changing that, but you're actually recalling it as a memory. So this is incredibly fascinating. There's a study by Bartlett in psychology, and he's kind of like one of the pioneers of this on the study of memory, where he researches how he has this. He bases it on this called Story of the Ghosts, where he sets out this kind of experiment. But anyway, my point is, it's not people like Qatada they're not necessarily evil people. It's these kind of people are, Abu Ishaq al-Sabi'i, you've got A'mash, Qatada, Zuhri, all these people, they are massive, where you see this explosion of hadith coming from them. Because what happens, you've got like this kind of like Cambrian explosion that comes forth from them, because you've got, prior to them, hadith is like there's a few, and then there's this huge like from them. These powerhouses, huge amounts of hadith come from them. Like it's all of a sudden there's this burst, this volcanic eruption of hadith, and that is. You got to place a question mark there.
Definitely.
Because prior to them, it's like there's one hadith here, one person, two people, three people. And then there's like, from these individuals, there's like 50. Yeah. It's like, whoa, okay. And this is why Imam Malik, it's fascinating. Imam Malik, when he died, they found he had this, he had a container of like thousands of narrations by Zuhri. He never transmitted them.
Exactly.
And he used to say during his lifetime that I have so many narrations that I'd rather I was killed than to transmit them, because this stuff, like he knew, is nonsense. It's not authentic. But yeah, we've got quite a few people waiting. Shadman, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Take care, stay blessed. Assalamu alaikum. Right, Momo, you're doing it. Let's bring Momo in, people. Assalamu alaikum, Momo.
Oh my God, Sheikh chose me.
You are the chosen one, Momo. You're the chosen one.
Hey man, we've got some. The Ummah is not in total peril after the last two you brought on. Alhamdulillah. I was like, you brought on a young guy, Mufti Abu Alfa, YouTube, and the first question he goes is, who would you pick on? Whose side would you be on between Ghazali and Ibn Rushd? I was like,
wow, this is amazing, yeah. The young talent that you're seeing.
When Shah asked like these brilliant questions about Christianity, and he's quoting Deuteronomy chapter 19, like in Zakir Naik's.
Wow.
Oh, mashallah, man, that's amazing, man. At 16
There's
years
hope.
Impressive, man. Mashallah.
Very impressive. I mean, if we go back now, time travel to us as 16 would be
in the same age category, Sheikh.
This is the problem, you see. Okay, I meant us in the royal us. The royal we. Yeah, so if I go back to when I was 16 and so what's going on, Momo?
Also, alhamdulillah. Look at the comments. How are you, Sheikh, man?
I'm good. There was all this palaver that you're aware of online, and it's alhamdulillah, it's gone good. I like it sometimes. It keeps you alive.
You're truly living in people's heads rent free.
Ruqayya Haris. I'm living in people's heads rent free, huh? That's the.
I remember reading someone's location once on Twitter. I found it really quite genius. Actually, it said that location under your skin.
That's so true. I think I live like that with so many people. But I tell you something. What's interesting?
To be fair, I do know Ruqayya in real life, and we do get along. Disclaimer for Ruqayya, yeah. So
Sure. I mean, look, I'm not saying crazy people don't know people. Look, the interesting thing is this, that all these people, I generally have a principle. For the most part, I will, unless somebody publicly on a public platform is trying to just, let's say, attack me and do all of these things, I usually, for the most part, just let people be. Unless something is viral and I comment on it. But usually I won't go and let's go pick on this person, let's go pick on this person. I'm not really interested. These people will publicly gun for me. They will do all these things, make kind of like all these remarks. And then obviously, my principle is that, look, let them be, but if they try to troll you, you have to totally decimate them. and then they'll make all this kind of drama. Oh my god, oh my god, he's talking about, oh my god, and you think like, acha.
No, to be fair, I think that's a fair principle. I mean, if you go after someone, you can't then manage their reaction. Because their reaction is going to be their reaction.
Because you get this, like you had now, Asim Qureshi, sharing my thing, attacking me. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if Asim Qureshi did something in the past and I commented, but I generally don't really speak about him. Obviously, I don't really like that kind of jihadi mindset anyway. But that I don't really, you can see my Monday nights. I've not been gunning for these people. You've got these other people. My point is, now that he shares something on a platform about me being some kind of despicable person, now, obviously, I expose him for the kind of extremist nutcase that he is. And then somebody sent me his kind of, whether it was tweets or whatever, saying, oh my God, people saying, did he refer to you by your name? Oh my God. Why don't you get the lawyers? You think, cha. Lawyers, cha, shabash.
For me, it's very simple. You gun for someone directly, you cannot manage their. If they come back and troll you with 1,000 people, then it's fair game. It's a fair game, especially Twitter. Twitter, as much as I'm very active on Twitter, as much as I love Twitter, it is probably one of the most toxic apps out there.
It is.
Just literally say one thing indirectly to alluding to something, and then you wake up. I mean, one thing I've got to manage, just to kind of manage my mental health on the app, is I mute my notifications on the app, because some days you wake up to like several threads against you, and there's no way of managing it at all.
This is why I mean, occasionally I breeze in and out of Twitter. I don't really, I'm not very active on Twitter. Reason being, because Twitter is just toxic. It's just, there's zero empathy. People are just there to troll people. I mean, the level of toxicity on Twitter is just, I think it's terrible, honestly.
It's very weird because it grants this kind of anonymity, like you can really be anonymous but still be very well known on Twitter, if that makes sense. So you can have anonymous, no one knows who you are, but you have 50,000 followers.
And this is what then gives these people, this kind of they just become these kind of monsters online. Like they will just hate on people, and just that becomes their thing. Whereas you've got other platforms. If people want to go on to YouTube, if they want to go on these other, show themselves and talk. But that requires skill and talent. And my point to these people was that, look, It's interesting. It is interesting how I unite the haters, though.
This has been a special skill for you for quite some time.
It is. It's from my karamat.
Don't worry, Sheikh. I'm already preparing to write the eulogy of when you pass. قد عجمع كلهم.
Allah, Allah, Allah. You know, وكان يجمع من شتات الفص. What shall we call them? Right, these people. But Allah, Allah. Because it's amazing. You'll get these, on one hand, you'll get these extremists, you'll get these feminazis, these people who just hate all men. You'll get these other kind of hardline madkhali salafis. You'll get these, and they'll just all come together just to hate on me. I love it though.
You know what? You gotta give it in it. The Aqidah couldn't do it. None of all these things could bring the Muslims together in the UK. We can't even unite on how to do Eid. What calendar should we follow? But one thing we can be united upon is we must hate on Mufti Abu Layth.
Why not? You know what? I'll drink to that, man. Why not? Why not?
I'll leave it to you, Sheikh. I know you must have loads of people on. Inshallah.
Cool, man.
Take care.
Take care, man. Stay blessed. Much love. Assalamu alaikum. All right, people. That was Momo in the house. Always awesome catching up. Momo's doing it. And I've got to say, so far, that's three. I mean, Momo slightly older than the earlier callers, but still very young. And it just goes to show that there is incredible hope amongst the young people of this, of this ummah of Muslims in the West. Look at the, you've got the intellect, the voice of reason, the research. Momo himself studying actively in Egypt, in Al-Azhar, different places. It gives you, it brings solace to the hearts to know that. Right, who do we have waiting here, people? All right, Shirazi. Let's see. Assalamu alaikum.
How you doing?
Wa alaikum assalam. I'm good. Where are you joining us from?
I come from Seattle, Washington.
All right. I gotta say, you catfished us with that name. I want to. How did you get the name Shirazi?
No, it's actually my family name. They come from. I did the ancestry thing, and it turns out I come from Iran somehow. But yeah.
Wow. Khushamadid. That's amazing, man. Where are you joining us from? Seattle, are you?
Yes, Seattle. Yeah.
All right. Ahlan wa sahlan, Shirazi, man. Talk to us. Share your, is this some
First
thoughts or questions or something you'd like to share?
Thank you for everything. Since I found you, it's just like, it's been amazing. I've been watching all your videos, and I do have a question though about karamat, right? So
sure, go for it.
So I went to madrasa, Sufi school. So we follow the Alawiyya tariqa, right? So about karamats, they give us these stories about these awliya Allah, and some of them are ridiculous, to be honest. So there's like I'll give you one story. There was this big sheikh. They were on a journey, and it was in the night, and there was no food, right? So he's like, "Oh, okay, I'll get you guys some food." He turns into a lion after praying to Allah, and goes hunt, and then and then comes back, right? And this
and comes back and eats the other guys.
No. No,
that'll be a proper plot twist.
No, once he turns into a lion, he just went hunting and then brought the food back, and they start eating, right? So I'm like, and it was in the middle of a session, right? We were learning like the seerah of the prophet, and somehow, some way, the karamat of awliya went in there, and they keep on telling us these stories. I just want to hear about what's your thoughts on the karamats of the awliyas. Do you actually believe in them, first of all?
Right. Okay. So I don't believe in the supernatural kind of things like this. Like I believe, you see, miracles within the laws of nature. Yes, of course, I believe in miracles like that. I believe that. So, for example, life is a miracle. I believe that sometimes miraculous things happen. Like a person could fall from 10-story building, but somehow miraculously he still stays alive. There could be a plane crash, and although it's a miracle, this one passenger survives. These kind of miracles I absolutely believe in, as does everyone. And these are the kind of miracles that in life we people pray for. They may say, if somebody may be very seriously ill, and you may make a dua, and sometimes you see miraculously somebody recovers. They've doctors say, it's very unlikely this person, forget very unlikely, they say sorry, this person isn't going to make it, but they do. It's a miracle. These kind of miracles, of course, I believe in, and I pray that may everybody be able to kind of benefit from things and witness these miracles in their own lives. May their lives be touched by the hand of God. But then you've got supernatural, like these kind of astronomical, larger than life kind of things. Like you said, a person. I'm hungry. You need some food. Okay, let me just transform into a lion, right, and I'll go and hunt, and I'll come back and this. Like I remember reading these stories about there was such and such person who his murids were walking with him, right, and they say to him, Sheikh, like they kind of make this. Not sarcastic, but they make this remark that Sheikh, had have you done this, you could have had more dunya, for example, you could have earned something. So he says, oh, you think it's money I want? You think it's, and then he says, look over there, and there's this like a mount, like a hill, like a big mount here, and it turns into gold. And then as he walks, this mini mountain walks with him, made out of gold, and then he takes the gold, like a few pieces, and he gives it to somebody, and then he says to his murids that, you think if I wanted gold, I couldn't have it. I chose to stick to Allah rather than gold.
Just to add on to that, sometimes this story ends up getting updated yearly,
The new latest update, right?
The different ustad or ulama has a different story and a different version of it. So I'm just wondering, how did it come? Like, was it orally transmitted? Is it written somewhere? Because
I think there's like folkloric stories. So what happens is they get passed down, and along the way, sometimes people will modify them as they tell them. Like a moment ago, I was speaking to somebody speaking about memory is constructive. Like it's not passive. As we refer back to memory, we recreate it. So without noticing it, but we do. So sometimes people will think, yeah, I'm sure this, like somebody might say, like, imagine I've got a story about, let's say Sheikh Abdul Qadir, like maybe about Junaid, the famous Sufi, al-Baghdadi. Now, you might tell that story on to someone, but you're not sure. Did he say Junaid? Did he say Abdul Qadir al-Jilani? And then what happens is the other person, he narrates it from you as, oh, well, it's Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, and changes the setting a bit. And then he narrates it to someone who says, well, I'm pretty sure he was talking about a Sheikh, a Pir Sahib in India. And then what happens is these stories keep morphing. They get a life of that's from the karamat of these stories, really.
Right. Okay. And what about the knowledge aspect of it? How when he was 13, he was just, there's like one of this story, right? There was this student that was intellectually a little bit slower than the others, right? But he was so devoted to the sheikh, how he was cleaning, right? He was so devoted for years and years. And one time the students end up laughing at him, like, oh, you just end up just cleaning after the sheikh. Then the sheikh overheard, right, that story. Then the sheikh comes in and says, okay, all of you just gather around. Let's do some dhikr. So they do dhikr, and they recited Fatiha. and the kid got ijaza, and he went back home and ends up making everyone in there Muslim. And he becomes a big sheikh just like that with the ijaza from the sheikh. He ended up knowing all the hadiths, all the Quran, just by the ijaza of the sheikh. And I find it ridiculous, to be honest. But
yeah, I mean,
so you end up like respecting the ustad, like, you know, yeah, right.
Yeah. So sometimes, you know, sometimes these stories are there to, it's like the moral. So what they're trying to say is, oh, you need more adab. Right. So, and you shouldn't be arrogant. And then what they'll do is they'll come up with a story. There used to be this guy that was a jahil, but, you know, he had great adab. And then the moral of the story is he ends up becoming successful. You know, it's like the tortoise and the hare, but the tortoise wins in the end. And so this is the kind of story that people will, you know, they're trying to give some moral out of it. But at the moral aspect, fine. I accept that, you know, people should have good character. You know, you should humble yourself, and you should. And from that side, I think these things are fine. But they're presented as real stories, and then the people listening, sometimes they then belittle knowledge, because they will say things like, you know, even the shaitan had knowledge. Like, what is knowledge? Like, it's not really, you know, this person had one glance of the sheikh and his life was changed. You know, that miraculous glance. Allah. What they call nazar, you know, in Urdu they call it nazar-e-karam, but this whole kind of that one nazaratun, you know, nazaratul karama, it comes from the sheikh, and you'll get all of a sudden miracles will happen. But in the real world, that's not going to happen, unfortunately. You know?
Once, I saw this happening, right, when I was on my ibtida'i, right, course. Once I was done with that, I just went to I went to the Wahhabis, right? I don't want to call them Wahhabis. I went to a madrasa down there. But the system is the same thing. It's just that on this side, they more focused on aqidah. And I'm like, there's no balance really with this. Just like you say, there's like the systematization of the madrasa's institution. It's ridiculous, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's, you know, you've hit the nail on the head there, Shirazi. The thing is that, you see, it's a cult, and the problem is that people, you can replace one cult with another cult, but it's still a cult. Like, so it's true, the Salafis, on that note, they don't have these folklores, they don't have these stories, and sometimes they don't even have respect towards a lot of their teachers. Sometimes they do respect some, but others, they might treat them like, you know, and that's a bit strange. But they don't have that folkloric, you know, all these decorations, and don't have these great stories of like a hand's coming out of the moon, and this is coming out of there, and they're flying tortoise, and they don't have these stories. But then they are just, what they bring is a different kind. They just bring this other darkness of this cultish Puritanism. Everybody, you know, oh my God, you know, we're Puritans, we're better than the rest, everything. And it's just it's an absolute cult. So, yeah, the main thing.
My question to you is, how will you fix it, Mufti? Is there like a solution you have in mind? Because
that would be my karama if I could fix it. You know, that would be min karamatish. No, I feel honestly, what a person has to do, what we have to do, there is a responsibility that we have to awaken people's reason. Like, and then just let them be in control of their lives. Like, if you want to go, I'm not saying to people, don't go to these kind of Sufi gatherings. I'm not saying that. Go. I'm not saying to them, don't go to these Salafi gatherings. Go there. But have that, you know, awake. Make sure the lights are on. Don't be, you know, this kind of like an acolyte, like part of this cult. Follow them. But if you hear something that does not make sense, that why do I have this God complex that everybody's going to hell except me? You know, like, you need to be able to have this, the lights on. You need to have these critical faculties thinking for yourself. So I do try to encourage people to to realize. I know people know this as information, but it's not realized, unfortunately, with the Muslims as well, that God does not require an institution for you to know him. You know, he is there for you. Like, we do not, it is not the madrasa or the masjid. Allah is with you. Like, it is, okay, you pray, but salah or these things, or dua, or just contemplation does not require an institute. You understand? Like, these, I'm not saying you need to necessarily, people need to, I mean, personally, I'm not a part of any of these institutions, and I think they're toxic, but I'm not saying to people they need to listen to me and give up these things. No, it's your life, but don't feel that Allah is only through these people or through these groups. Allah is above that, you know, subhanahu wa ta'ala, amma yasifun, like he's above these things. He's already closer to you than your jugular vein. So if you see the institutionalization of the deen and you want to be a part of it, that's up to you. It's your life, your liberty to do so. But just make sure that the light stays on. Yeah.
Right. My thing is, though, there's no like, it's all institutionalized, and you want to know, you want to learn about your deen, but you have to pick and choose which one to go, and that kind of like, it's a disadvantage, really, if you think about it, because you have to stick on their. It's what they teach you. It's part of the syllabus.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, look, Islam, like other religions, has for many centuries been institutionalized. I do feel that we do need to really break free of these shackles. But my point, when I was saying it to people, what I'm trying to say to them is, you see, you shouldn't, to break free, you need to realize it. Like, you don't, if you're only doing it because you're blind following me, then that's just part of the problem.
No, but that's the thing, though. Not everyone is a mufti.
Yeah, but my point is that, you see, I want you to realize that Islam does not belong in an institution. And that realization can come to you without being a mufti. You can just see right for right and wrong for wrong. You can see the elements of power, elements of control, elements of cultish behavior. And you can then realize that, look, surely Islam did not come for this. You know, Islam did not come to turn religion into a cult. So, yeah.
All right. One last question, Mufti.
Okay, go for it, Shirazi.
I can't believe I'm talking to you right now. Okay.
It's an absolute pleasure, man. It's awesome that you're talking to us.
All right. This is more personal. What if, do you think if you wore like a thobe and a turban and everything and become like a mufti in the eyes, the proper mufti,
of course,
would you gain followers and like masses, will they follow you? If you kept it like,
I think you know.
Go on, please go ahead.
No, so I think yes, I would. I won't lie to you. I think if let's say I keep all my, you know what people say, I've got wacko views, or I've got fringe opinions, or I've got like crazy, whatever. Let's say wacko. I keep all my wacko views. Even if I kept my laughter, but I wear an imama. I grow the side of the beard out a bit. Like, let's just say, even if I don't grow it massive, but I grow it out a bit, I can keep this beard the same length, let's say, but I just grow this out a bit, and I wear a thobe. Now, I, in my heart of hearts, believe that, yes, if it was for following, my following would easily triple. Easily, because the religious crowd, there would be several people amongst them that are happy then to kind of share my things and to do stuff, because they would just say, okay, just ignore his jokes, but look, you know, mashallah, look what he's saying. But, you know, I want to say something.
Okay.
There's two things here. One, right, is, you see, primarily the people that I want to connect with, I want to connect with. This is a first thing I want to say, and then the second most important thing. That the first thing I want to say, the people I want to connect with, the majority of Muslims, like at least 80, 85, possibly 90%, are actually disenfranchised Muslims. They're not that religious crowd. Okay, they're the voiceless majority of Muslims who feel that they can't relate to Islam, because to relate to Islam you need to look like that, right? So to me, these people are much more important. The religious people have got they've got hundreds of thousands of Maulanas, yeah. So that's that point. The second most important point, I honestly, if I did that, it's not difficult. I could just slap. I've got a thobe, or a qamis. I could slap that on and put a hat on my head and say, okay, I suppose I can't keep growing the beard out every time, but okay, let's say I grew it out. It's no big deal. Beards are in anyway. It's fashionable now to have beards. The truth would be that I know in my heart of hearts that this is just an act. Yeah, I am just doing this to gain a following or to have people accept what I'm saying. Now, what will happen is when people, because I'm not being genuine to myself, I'm not being sincere, Allah first of all says that akhlisu lahuddin. This is the thing. Be sincere, be true to you about his deen. Right? So whatever that deen is to you, be true to it. Now, what will happen is people who, let's say people who do have an issue with me, this is where the drama will begin. That, oh my God, look, we caught him out looking like this. We caught him out doing this. We caught him out. You're pretending to be this pious person that you're not. You just be real. Be who you are. Some people will hate you. Some people will like you. Some will listen to you. Others won't. It's okay. People can look at me and say, look, you know what? He's a nutcase. I don't want to listen to him. Khalas, it doesn't bother me. But at least if they do listen to me, they're not in for any surprises. I'm not this closet kind of like, I'm pretending to be pious, and then you're going to come, oh my God, you know what? I saw him the other day with this t-shirt on, and he's doing like this, and he's laughing his head off, and he's, what the hell? I'm being like that in public. So you can say to me, look, oh, I don't like you, and I'll walk away now. That's absolutely fine. But to me, at least I'm being real. I would have lived my life. Look, when we reach, there's been I've shared this before, there's been a very fascinating study done with, you've got certain people in palliative care towards the end of their life. They've, unfortunately, they're suffering from terminal illnesses or whatever. And there's been studies done where some researchers have asked them, what are some of the greatest regrets they've had in life? Yeah. Right. Now, and they've kind of summarized them into the top 5. But one of the greatest regret that people had in life was, they said, I wish I didn't care as much about the opinions of others, and I was just more true to myself. That, now that life with me has reached its end. Like, these people had something like 5 weeks left to live, 6 weeks left to live. Like they were dying. And they said that I wish I did that. Like I cared. Look, people care about the opinions of people who don't even know them. I don't even, like, come on, like if you've got thousands of viewers, let's say, you wouldn't, and you've got haters, thousands, don't even know them. Like they have no input in your life. If I was to care about them that much that I become fake, I would rather just live happy, live my way, laugh my head off, have my understandings. And when that time comes, that life is coming to an end, at least I will feel that, alhamdulillah, at least I lived happily. I lived in my way. I was true to me, whether and people around me, it was good. Like whether somebody living 5,000 miles away from me who didn't even really know me. Whether he hated me or not, I don't care. It's like, to me, like, what difference does that make? Some guy who I don't even know. So yeah, I hope that shed some light.
Right. So your point is you just want to reach the specific masses that.
I mean, that's part of the point. The other point is I feel that it wouldn't be genuine. Like, I feel that it wouldn't, and there is a little add-on point you could put there. The add-on point is part of the shock factor does once again bring Islam back to its roots. Because the truth is that in the Prophet's time, they didn't have this uniform. They didn't have this, you would have seen, like, if you brought some of the companions today, like, in all honesty, they wouldn't be allowed in some of these mosques. They were allowed in. It'd be just about tolerated to only just pray and leave. Come on, like, the companions had like braided hair. Some of them walked around topless. Like they just wore a sarong kind of thing. They wouldn't be allowed to sit on a minbar and preach to the Muslim.
Ahlul won't even be allowed in the mosque.
Yeah, they would be.
Right.
They had like the Salaf had like ponytails, and they had like braided hair, loads of different plaits and things like that. You think these people today would allow them in the masjid? Or they might allow them to pray, and then they would ask them. They'd never allow them to sit on a minbar. So you see this facade of Islam with this turban and this kind of thobe, it's not from the Prophet anyway. So why sacrifice who you are for something that isn't even from this deen? The deen began as strange, something that was not, Bada al-Islamu ghariban, and it will return to that state. So I feel that, yeah, like, people look at me and they find it odd that how can you be a mufti looking like that? But it's in that oddness that if they can manage to withhold their being judgmental nature, they will find the trueness of Islam. So that's my kind of message. But Shirazi, it's been absolutely awesome. It's been a pleasure having you on. Take very good care of yourself.
You have a nice one.
Assalamu alaikum. All right, people. Quite interesting there. Some fascinating questions. We have here the comments. Sniff, you're doing it with the super chat. Much love. I'm no longer a Mufti Abu Alpha. All right, the barman, you're doing it. Mariam said people are so judgmental. It is so true, Mariam. People are, and it's a shame. Mufti Gupshup bahut hai this week. All right, it is. Let's have some people who's waiting. We've got over here. All right, let me. Ahmed As-Sabbagh. All right. Assalamu alaikum, Ahmed.
Wa alaikum assalam.
All right, Ahmed, where are you joining us from?
I'm from Ohio, US.
All right, Ohio. What's going on? How are you doing? Is this something you'd like to share with us? Comments or questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on your criticism of like Salafis and Deobandis. I think they're the most successful Islamic movements. Like everywhere they touched, they made Islamic schools. In America and the UK, Pakistan, India. So why do you like criticize them, insult them that much?
Okay. Okay, so that's a very good point, actually, Ahmed. Right, okay, now, sorry, when you said the Salafiyah have made schools, what, Salafiyah have made schools or the Deobandis have made schools?
The Deobandis.
Hello? The Deobandis have made school. Salafis haven't really made, they're not known for their madrasas. Would you agree? Or are we no?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
So okay, no, I'm just focusing on the question. So Right. Okay. So these two groups, and it's interesting. It's interesting that you put these two groups together, or is that just because I criticize these two groups, or is there a reason you see them close together, or what do you?
No, just specific to you, I guess.
Oh, specific to me. Okay. Right. So I'm not against. Like I just said a moment ago, if you were listening, I'm not saying to people you need to leave the Salafis or you need to. I just said that live, just something like 10 minutes ago. Now, what I'm against is this dogmatism. I'm against cultish behavior, and I'm against cults. So yes, I will diss people for that. I will challenge them. But I feel that that's because it needs to be challenged. If you don't challenge it, I feel that's a disservice to the deen. And look, it doesn't mean that they've done nothing good. I feel that the Deobandis have, you're right, they've established a great madrasa system in the past, and it's trickled down till today. But you see that what was great in the past has become poisonous today, as well as in it's kind of like become contaminated with poison. I'm not saying it's absolutely poison, but it's contaminated. We see something that works amazing 150 years ago, in this day and age, just holding on because it was amazing. It's like saying, if I don't know, somebody in the village 100 years ago designed a particular cart for the oxen and things like this to plow the fields, and it was amazing, and let's say it was your great grandfather, and that's amazing, he did that. But that doesn't mean just because he did it, you have to do it today. Today you can use a tractor. Technology has moved on.
Yeah.
So their madrasa system was great when they set it up. That it was something about let's disseminate knowledge. But look, when they set it up, did they not? Wasn't it I believe Maulana Qasim Nanotwi said, as far as what I'm aware, that they must teach Sanskrit. Today, what did the later Deobandi say? Oh, English is haram. What was Maulana Qasim Nanotwi saying? Oh, you should learn the ancient Hindu language. Today, that was over 100 years ago. 100 years later, they've gone in reverse. It's like, so I'm not dissing on Deobandis as a whole. I think they've done amazing things as well. But the truth is, for this day and age in the West, they are outdated. And that's a huge problem. So they need to either update, or they're going to just fall by the wayside and die out. They're going to become dinosaurs. So that's what I feel. It's the fact that they so adamantly are against critical thinking. That does bother me. Yeah, I won't lie. I think people need to be encouraged to think critically. Oh, I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, that gave me a different insight, I guess. I have one last question.
Sure, go for it. And I didn't answer about the Salafis. I mean, look, the Salafis, it's a Puritanist cult. Yeah, I'm just being honest. Yes, they've done some good things as well. I'm not going to lie. They have done some good things. But I've never said that none of these people have never done anything good. I mean, unless I've said that, are you aware of me saying that?
No.
I've not. In fact, I'm on my Monday nights with Mufti. I can get the part for you on several. I've actually said one of the blessings of the Salafi movement was they created a culture of once again reconnecting with Hadith literature, because the Hadith literature had actually disappeared, and it only re-emerged with the emergence of the Salafi culture. Obviously, they weren't called Salafis then. Back then, they were called either Ahlul Hadith or Wahhabis or whatever people say. But Salafis, this whole culture, what it did was it brought back this study of Hadith, and I think that's amazing.
India, right?
And I've rated that.
Yeah, I saw your.
Cool. Yeah, sure.
You
Did you say you had?
your Hadith series
Did you?
where you like gave an introduction, you said that was happening in India, right?
Yeah. That will. I mean, I think in one I focus on the Indian tradition, but yeah, absolutely. I think worldwide, to be fair, the Salafis have contributed to the renaissance of Hadith studies. But with it came a curse. They re-concretized Hadith dogmatism. So this thing of like making Bukhari super sacred, this was the curse that that it brought with it. So I feel that yes, but they have done some things good. I'm not going to say they never did anything good, but they are a cult. Let's not lie. I mean, they seem to be a clear cult. And but if a person is a Salafi, I'm not going to say to him, "Oh my God, It's like I said a moment ago. You need to think for yourself." Did you say you had another question as well?
Yeah, I had another question as well. So for the Hadith
Doing
about
it, Ahmed.
the awrah for a male being between the the knees and wherever else it was, they said, well, what about the authenticity of the Hadith? I mean, can you tell us anything about that?
Right. Okay. I mean, right. This general understanding that the aura is, I don't think that's a Sahih Hadith, to be honest with you. Because why? Because we know from the practice that's not how people were. We know that in the time of the Prophet, they weren't so, men did used to show their thighs and things like this. I don't mean they used to walk around always showing their thighs, but when they would sit down, because they wore sarongs, they wore izars. Now, they never wore them like the kind of style that like Indonesian people have today, or some of these people where they have, or like in Bangladesh, they have a lungi, where it's like a skirt that's all tied round, like it can't open. But the more traditional izar that they had in the time of the Arabs, or what is known as a dhoti, is where you have an open cloth and you just tie it. Now with that, when you sit down and you raise one leg, what will happen is often it will kind of go bare. And especially when they used to ride on horses, or they would ride on camels, it would become like a thigh would become bare. So I don't believe that the Prophet would have said that, because it doesn't correlate with the normal practice, and even the fiqh doesn't recognize it, because the Maliki madhab says the only aura for a man, it would say, is just the sawatan, it's just the private parts, and obviously makhrajan, the kind of the rectum as well. But they would say that's it, that it's not, it's not, the rest is not really, you can call it an extended kind of aura, like generally propriety issues. We wouldn't just, walk around just wearing trunks, but it's not haram or anything.
Yeah, I always kind of rendered that very unrealistic, that Hadith. Always saw it like unreasonable. So
So look at this. You got a question here which ties in. Isn't a cult just a religious group you don't like? Look at that. No, it's not. So for example, I could not like certain people's interpretations, but they're not necessarily a cult. A cult would be a group that is dogmatic, anti-critical thought. And it's very clear. People will understand what a cult is. So, this sense of unquestionable submission to whatever the principles or whatever it is. But yeah, I just thought I'd just say that before you go. But shukran, Ahmed.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure
by the
having
way,
you on.
Mufti, I hope you can maybe debate Farid Responds or Muhammad Hijab or Dawah Man sometime. It'd be very interesting to watch.
Sure. I mean, I've actually asked them to come. Okay, I haven't asked Dawah Man, but I've asked Farid. You see, recently, a little while back, I can't remember now, was it maybe 4 weeks or something back, there was this whole fiasco on Twitter he started to kind of, this thing just erupted. Now, I don't really use Twitter much, but it started where he said something about me, then I responded, and he was like, oh, you child, you this, that, blah, blah, blah. I will annihilate you in this. So I said to him, look, how about you come on Mind Trap, my show? And he said, you know what I'll do better than that? I'll fly over to the UK. I'll set up a whole arena for a debate. I'll do this. And and I said, cha, listen, Superman, before you go on to doing these great dream projects, I said to him, look, stop the drama. Yeah, and I actually said this on Twitter, it's still going to be there. I said, since I'm a child, yeah, it should be easy to shut me up. Like, think about it. Like, if somebody said to me, you know, Mufti, you know, they're so adamant on debating me, and I know I can destroy the person easily. You know, it's just like a child in front of me in a debate. Khalas, I said, look, come on. Like, I said, forget this drama about I'll fly to the UK. And I said, just tell me now, and this evening we'll make it happen. I said, I'll make it happen. Let's do it. I'll bring you in, and let's have a discussion. You know, he wanted to discuss Sahih Bukhari. I wanted to discuss Sahih Bukhari. I said, look, let's discuss it, because you worship Sahih Bukhari, right? Let's talk about its authenticity. You prove to me Sahih Bukhari to be authentic, right? And let's have that discussion. You feel that since I don't know what I'm talking about, it should be easy. Like, come on, like if you say to me, oh, Mufti, I want to talk about the Maliki madhab, and you think, well, he doesn't know, or I think, look, you don't know much about it, should be easy to have, you know, to just destroy you in a conversation, because I know that I clearly would know all these things. So similarly, he claims that I don't know what I'm talking about on Bukhari. I said, let's come on, Mind Trap, let's have a chat. Let's do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's being too petty about coming on to your show. Maybe if you guys have it like on a neutral platform, he might.
Look, listen, what is this? I'm not going to attack him. You know, on a virtual show, I'm not going to slap him, am I? Like, I'm not going to attack him. I'm not going to harm him. At any point, he can come on and say a disclaimer that if I feel you're going to do this, I'll disconnect. He just has to press that button, disconnect, and he's off. Like, what's the... I'm a child. He's publicly written, you're a child, I will humiliate you. This is on his Twitter account. It's there. Look, I guarantee I'm not going to start swearing at him, am I? He's not going to come on there, I'm going to go, you effing, bliming, blah, blah, blah. He knows I'm not going to do any of that. I've done 40 episodes of Mind Trap. I've never done that with anyone. You come on, you prove to me, I will let you talk, and you tell me, prove to me Sahih Bukhari. The truth is this. It's like Jonathan Brown. He tried to challenge me, and then he publicly had to state he said that in all honesty, I'm underskilled in this. I don't have the knowledge or the research to be able to speak about Sahih Bukhari like that. That's why I can't accept your dialogue on it. At least Jonathan Brown was being honest. He said that on Facebook. Because he publicly decided to attack me, you know, one of the problems these people, I'll tell you what it is. Look, these people look at me and they see some guy sitting there, you know, he's got a chain, he's got an earring, he's got this goatee, spiky hair. What would this guy possibly know? So it gives them this false, this kind of false hope that they can go out and just say something. So it's like Jonathan Brown came out and said, you know, Mufti Abu Layth, I listened to his thing. First of all, it's not Bunani, it's Badnani. He got this name wrong. And then I was like, acha, mere chache. So I took a screenshot of the Malikiya Tabaqat and I put it on Facebook. I said, it is Bunani. But just because I said there's actually 14 different scholars that share that name. And the ones you're referring to are linked with from the Maghrib, and this is from Tunis. It's Bonana. But you didn't know that, did you? You just assumed I wouldn't know. So I said to him that, because he kept saying, I don't know what I'm talking about Sahih Bukhari, and when I said about the manuscripts, and I said all these things, and, you know, whether it was the Nuskha Sultaniya, or whether it was Unini, or whether it was all of these, they said, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Mufti doesn't know. So I thought, okay. I said, come on, let's have a dialogue. And when I started sharing my information, and I've got a whole Bukhari Gate video, I say, prove to me. Go on. How difficult is it to prove to me Farabri is authentic? Just show it in a book and job done. I shut up. Right? So, but you can't do it. You can't do it from somebody who actually knew Farabri. You can't do it. You can only do it from people who come hundreds of years later. Right? So it's easy to shut me up, to show me that I'm wrong. Now, then he at least, okay, the decency he had is because so many people pestered Jonathan Brown on his Facebook post saying, look, why don't you just have a dialogue with Mufti Abu Layth? And then he openly on his post said, look, the truth is I don't have the research in this field. So, take it. But these other people like, Gangu Teli and these people, the truth is they're not skilled in this. They just know how to debate Shia. They just know how to quote Shia stuff and argue with the Shia. And okay, the Shia thing is not my specialty. Like if you ask me, talk about Shia resources and their their sources and their books, and it's not my specialty. I don't have the research in Shia texts. Okay, so I'm just going to be honest with you. Look, I don't have the research in that. Now, I would have to learn, and I'm not really interested in learning about all that kind of stuff. So I'm just being honest. Like if it's not my forte, I'm not going to get involved. So, but with these people, because everything rests on Sahih Bukhari, and obviously it shook their world. That Bukhari rests on this bechara Farabri, and Farabri is neither here, neither there. He's just been like glorified for no particular reason. Nobody actually vouched for him. And I just said, look, bring me one person that knew Farabri that said he's reliable. And I will, everything right here, I accept what you say. You cannot bring me a single person that knew Farabri and could vouch for him. And yet this whole dogma of Islam that you make the Quran go around Bukhari is built on the back of on the shoulders of this one man, and look what he's done to this ummah. I'm not saying it's his fault. He just did what anyone would have done. He for him, it was just an investment. He was part of this. He was involved in the project. Whether he got it right, whether he got it wrong, whether he was reliable, whether he was unreliable, we don't know because we don't know anything about him. We just know he's this guy who had a bunch of students and his claim to fame was this Sahih Bukhari. That's his claim to fame. Wouldn't you jump with fame? If something's going to bring you money, it's going to bring you fame. Look at all these scholars. Somebody said to me a moment ago, look, Mufti, be honest, if you wore a thobe and you wore a hat and you did this, would you not get more followers? I said, I'm certain that they would exponentially grow if I was to do that. And he's asking me surprised because the truth is most people out there, if something will bring them some value, they would take it. It's capital at the end of the day. When it's a commodity, they would wear a thobe, and then they get later on caught out for being fake. Now, Farabri, this thing brought him fame. This brought him money, brought him wealth, it brought him status. I'm not saying he was an evil person. I'm not saying that. He was just like every other human who saw an opportunity and took it. But nobody told other people to be stupid. Just because a person had an opportunity and he took it, you don't need to be blind. You can still think, okay, wait a minute. This is a bit dubious. But yeah.
To be fair for Farid al-Khawaja, however you say his name, I feel like he's kind of tied up to an extent because a large part of his audience is like hardliners, hardline Salafis. So he tries really hard to please his audience. He doesn't really have any flexibility when it comes to what he shares his content.
I agree with you 100%, Ahmed. And this isn't about, by the way, what I'm saying isn't about him. This is generally, and I think, what you've said, you've hit the nail on the head, that is exactly the case with most of these preachers. That most of the preachers, ironically, the crowd that follows them actually controls them. It's weird because the crowd, like Sheikh Asrar, he's not Salafi. Sheikh Asrar, he's from the Brelvi community. Yeah, he's, same thing. When we had this thing with Sheikh Asrar, when we were off camera, he was absolutely decent with me, you know, very friendly, cracking jokes, doing all of this. As soon as he put his camera on, obviously our camera was still rolling. we just haven't released our footage, right? But obviously his camera, when he put his camera on, he'd go all serious, he wouldn't crack jokes, he'd be very anti me. But as soon as the camera, he stopped his camera, he was very friendly. He was like, oh, don't you remember we were this, we met up in Damascus, don't you remember we did this, we did that? And oh yeah, man, Mufti, you know. But otherwise, would he even call me Mufti? No. Off camera, I mean on camera, he'd never call me Mufti. He'd be like Abu Layth, you know. But off camera, absolutely friendly, because he doesn't have a personal problem with me, even though he disagrees with my views, which is fine. He even thinks, I'm pretty certain, you see, a lot of these people say this. They say, oh, yeah, you know, Mufti is the kind of person would like to hang out with. But, you know, it's just his views. Sheikh Asrar was messaging me at that time, saying, oh, yeah, you know, how about we hang out more and we do this? And then he went on his lives, he was saying I'm a deviant. And then I exposed that. I said, look, he messages me in the morning saying, hey, we should hang out. And then in the evening, he's doing a public speech saying I'm a deviant and a Dajjal. Now, obviously, then he got offended and blocked me. But my point was that, look, these people are only doing this because of the pressure, because the following expects that of them, that the following says, you have to be in a certain way. You know, I remember years ago, I was on this kind of platform it was called something like Multaqa or something. It was a WhatsApp platform. I think it still exists. But they used to, this is years back when probably now it's much bigger. But at that time, it had maybe 50 people on there. But it had all these sheikhs on there. You know, these Sheikh Haytham al-Haddad from the UK. Sheikh, he's a Salafi, as you know. It had Sheikh what's his name? Abdul Rahman Manghera, who's a Mufti Hanafi. Sorry, Mufti. I'm not Sheikh. They had Sheikh Zahir on there. They had all these other people on there. You know, they had a meeting, They would hold these meetings. I went to the meeting because I was on there as well. Obviously, people hated me on there. But at that time, because I never had Monday nights with Mufti, my views, maybe all my views weren't known, and my views were still developing. But when we were at this place, and it's got loads of these du'at and all these people on there, they're all friends. They all, you know, eating together, they're talking together, pray together, you know, massaging each other's egos, which is fine. Taking photos individually, I said to them, Sheikh, I said, how about, you know, such and such, or whoever they were that organized it, takes a group photo of you guys, even if you don't want me in it, takes a photo of you guys and shares it. Oh, no. They go, and I said, but I don't understand why. Even Sheikh Zahir, all these people, they said, no. Why not, Sheikh? They said, because, you know, our followings are not that mature yet. They're not. I said, but isn't this, you'd show unity? You know, you've got a Brailvi, you had like Maulana Gul there from representing the Brailvi Sunni community, who I respect a lot, by the way. And you had Brailvi ulama there, you had Deobandi, you had Salafi, you had these other du'at. I said, this is a perfect example to show unity. And they, not so much the Brailvis, they were fine. The others, Sheikh Haytham, I remember him being very vocal. No, we can't do that. Mufti Manghera saying no. Sheikh Zahir saying no, we can't do this because our followers can't see this yet. They're not ready for it. They're not mature enough. But this is the problem, isn't it? That you're just feeding because you're afraid that your congregation are gonna, you know, disown you.
Yeah.
But I've gone on for a while, right? Ahmed, it's been an absolute pleasure, man.
Jazakallah khair for your time.
Have a great evening wherever you are, man. Salaam Allahi alaykum. Right, people, all right. Sorry for that little rant there. You're doing it, people. You're doing it. Zeba, you're doing it. Awesome. I did. I know you'd come on there as well, and then gone off. So my apologies for not being able to take you on the live. If you come on, I will take you on. All right. All right. So session 89, Mufti talks about his meeting with Ali Dawa and said they debated for hours. Yeah, we did. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. This. We. They were surprised as well. They were surprised. You know, they underestimate me. You know, I don't blame them. I like it. It gives me the element of surprise. You know, when they bring people to debate me, and they look at me and think. And I'm thinking, don't worry, the joke's on you because my mind is active. All right, let's see who we got here, people. Let me just. All right, we've got Tea Shop Chiller. Tea Shop Chiller. Oh, assalamu alaikum, Tea Shop Chiller. Alaikum salam. Where are you joining us from?
London.
London. All right, bruv. London, bruv. It's a bit. What are you doing awake at this ungodly hour?
Man, I just have the worst sleep schedule.
Well, welcome to our world. Right. What? So, do we have a name for you, by the way, or you can go with Tea Shop Chiller? That's fine.
That's just a dumb YouTube name. My name is Alvi.
Alvi, all right, Alvi. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban. It's awesome to have you on here. Is there something you'd like to share? Thoughts, comments, questions?
So I wanted to ask you your thoughts about like the culture of like cynicism in the Muslim community. And one thing that I've always felt since I was a child is that I've always felt as though being Muslim kind of entitles you to a sense of like cynicism about the future of the world or just society in general. And I felt as though it's
sorry to interrupt. Do you mean, you see, just to be clear, when you're saying cynicism, do you mean by that a kind of a pessimism, or do you mean just because cynicism is generally like, you know, you question things, you know, you doubt the sincerity of things, you're very skeptical about certain things, you know, like you don't take them to be necessarily genuine unless proven. Yeah, you're not like, you know, if somebody says, look, I do this, you think maybe he's up to something. Is that what you mean, or do you mean like a negative, like pessimism, like they think the future is all bleak and doom and gloom?
I think both, in the sense that we have a cynicism about, say, for example, like if we'll subscribe to generally the more negative opinions with regards to the state of the world. So, for example, if someone were to suggest that the society was becoming like less violent, then we'd be like cynical about that claim. I feel as though, because it wouldn't. Muslims generally subscribe to the worldview that the world is getting worse as time progresses, and so it wouldn't make sense for the world to have gotten less violent.
Well said, Alvi. That's actually very, you know, spot on. That unfortunately, I don't believe Islam, but I believe you're right that Muslims, many Muslims, maybe not all, but many Muslims, they subscribe to a kind of like a, you know, it's like a very bleak perspective, almost a kind of Dostoevskian kind of very doom and gloom about the future. Humans are all doomed, and you know, it's a bad place. I mean, I get the fact the world can be a bad place, I'm not denying that, but to them it's like, you know, like things are just getting worse. And then they have these hadith like every year that comes will be worse than the one that comes after, and they use these kind of narrations, and it's a very medievalist worldview. So much of the world viewed the world like that in the medieval ages. Like in Europe, that was a very common worldview. And it's interesting from economics. They discuss the prosperity of economics began as people started to once again have faith in a future. Because like, if I run a business, I have to run it on the hope that the future will be better. Like, because otherwise, if, like, let's say I have to give you something on credit, or you have to give me something on credit, or we have to take a loan, or we have to arrange a contract. These things only work if there's in our minds, a promise of a better future. Like if somebody's going to give me a loan, or I'm going to give somebody a loan, it's only going to work if I think, well, next year there's going to be money around, and we're going to be around, and the person's going to pay me back. So hence in the past, even though these things did exist, people gave loans and stuff, but with ridiculous interest and stuff like that. But why did banks emerge at such and such stage throughout human history? The social narrative kind of got upgraded to a possibility of a future. And hence it ties in with things like the Industrial Revolution and stuff like this, when people start to see, oh, wow, okay, this is happening, that's happening. But yeah, I don't feel that that's, if you look at the Quran and the Sunnah, you don't necessarily see, the thing about, by the way, the thing about looking for resources, looking into our sources, is it's a bit, it's like that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You see, if you are pessimistic, you might find certain verses of the Quran that appear to be pessimistic. I'm not saying they are, but they appear, they can be read that way, But if you're optimistic, you will find optimistic things. And so what happens is these people find those pessimistic things, and they just keep reiterating them. And you have to remember, there's been the whole, several hundreds of years of colonialism, when people were living in bleak times. They were living in, like everything was downtrodden. They were suffering. They were victims. And it felt like the world is coming to an end. Because in Muslim history, this had never happened, that for generations, Islam remained subdued. Like Islam in the past, like you had the Mongol invasion, you had different things. It was horrific, catastrophic, but it lasted a few years. Maybe sometimes things last one generation, and then the situation always recuperated. But what happens with the colonial period is unprecedented. The whole balance shifts, and it does not get restored. Generations, like, think about it. I would grow up, I would die a natural death. If I lived a natural death, my children would grow up, die a natural death. Their children would grow up, die a natural, and it's still horrendous. Like, Muslims are completely subdued. This is unprecedented. Like, people thought, has God failed us? Have the scriptures lied to us? And to them, it's understandable to think, you know what, the world's just going to end. So, and it's in this era that we are still living a lot of that Islam right now. Because if you think about it, look, the Deobandi tradition emerges then. The Brelvi tradition emerges then from the British Raj. The Salafi tradition emerges then from the colonial period. The most of what you have of Islam today, even a lot of the modified Sufi tariqas that we have, the modified things, are from the era of the last 300-400 years, when colonialism and the scales had been tipped. So you can see, this, and those people were just writing their thoughts that, look, oh, the world is all doom gloom, it's doom and gloom. It's better to, just live an ascetic life, give up the dunya, end of times. But yeah, and it's hard. But whereas, look, when you look at the Hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, إذا قامت القيام, he says, إذا أتت الساعة, if the final hour comes and one of you is planting, فليزرع وَيَزْرَعُ أَحْدُكُمْ فَلْيَزْرَعْ. Or if he's eating a meal and he lifts his that kind of, you know, that morsel to his mouth, let him carry on eating. And now, if you think about it, look, I'm planting something. The world is coming to an end. That doesn't make any sense, does it? Why should I carry on planting? I mean, there's a tsunami erupting there, and I should be worrying about a plant. But what the Prophet was trying to teach you was that peace of mind, that kind of stillness, that in some ways, like when Voltaire said one must cultivate their garden. You see, this thing of like, you carry on. You know, you're here to make things grow. If the world comes to an end, it comes to an end. And I think even though it's in some ways it's, you know, almost allegorical, obviously, but it's so profound when you think about it. And that's in Sahih Muslim. But you're right. This message has kind of sunk, is capsized over time. Yeah. But I hope people, inshallah, restore it. I hope, inshallah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've noticed like a lot of Muslims have like a susceptibility to conspiracy theories because of this, like, because it kind of reinforces like the worldview, that kind of like cynical worldview. And also we have like a distrust of future generations. Like a lot of religious figures I've seen like often talk about like the youth, and like the word youth almost has like a negative connotation because of its association with like modernity or the future. And I think a lot of that is kind of like, it feels like alienating to some degree, like as someone who like participates in like modernity or is like considers themselves young. There's almost like a sense of detachment and alienation that you feel because of a lot of this like rhetoric. And I was wondering, do you see any like do you see that as like a trend that's like likely to continue, like with future generations? We always have that mistrust of like.
I'm hopeful that it will change, and I'm hopeful that it will change from the West. Because Muslims growing, you see, because what's happening is, you see, young people like yourself, Alvi, like, and people that have come on the show today, like they are kind of, they faced the brunt of this. So this thing that you said, like the youth is looked upon as like, oh, misguided or like a lost cause, and unless you be like us, sometimes people are strong-armed. They're kind of told, well, like, because I don't like what you're saying, I will say, oh, this is what's in the Quran. Oh, you don't like it, then you're going against the Quran. And what happens is sometimes you strong-arm people to saying, well, okay, and then they just ditch religion because they're not trained to be able to answer it. And they think, well, okay, well, in that case, you know, this can go to hell. But I feel that people now, there is a bit of a voice, it is emerging, that people are starting to question, they're starting to think, they're starting to rediscover faith for themselves. I think some of the young people that came on this show today, they are a testimony to that. And I am hopeful that it will restore somewhat of a balance in the years to come, inshallah. Because look, you can, like, somebody like you asking this question in a certain part of the world would have traditionally, you would have been shunned. You know, people would just tell you off for even asking. But yet here you are, you're asking, and you yourself are, as an individual, proudly embracing the faith. You know, it doesn't matter. Like people might say to you, oh no, you need to accept every year is negative. And you're like, look, that doesn't sound like Islam to me, but you can't chuck me out of Islam. You know, this is as much mine as it is yours. And I think that is that is a testimony that people are starting to reclaim this. Yeah. Cool, man. Alvi, it's been an absolute pleasure, man.
Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. Stay blessed, man. Assalamu alaikum. There you go, people. All right. That was the tea shop chiller, people. All right. Let me see. It says some people are trying to. All right. Come on. Let's see, who can we get on here? Who's been waiting? All right. Noor's Notes has been waiting for quite a while. Let's get on. Noor's notes. Assalamu alaikum. Noor's notes.
Why?
Assalamu alaikum. Noor, what is going on? Ahlan wa sahlan.
Assalamu alaikum. You can hear me all right, right?
Now we can. Yes, now we can.
Okay.
All right. Noor,
Alhamdulillah.
where are you joining us from?
I'm from the United States, just like most people, right?
You're doing it, Noor. You're doing it. All right. Well, it's ahlan wa sahlan. Is there some thoughts, comments, or question you'd like to share?
Yeah. I
Mhm.
have 2 questions.
Sure.
Sorry for some reason.
Sorry, the connection, the line is quite. Yeah, it seems to keep kind of.
Yeah, I'll just try and
off.
I'll try and make it super brief.
Yeah,
do you think
go
there's
for
a
it.
dominant narrative for like Islamic view in the West, like a sect kind of, or like a manhaj or something? Like, yeah. And do you think it's different online versus like in real life?
Okay, all right. Okay, so is there a dominant sect within the Western Muslim world? And then if so, is there a contrast with the real world and the virtual world? Have I understood the question? That's the question. Yeah. I do. Yeah, I do. I do actually. I think, you see, if you're looking at just, we're just looking at figures of, just numbers, stats. That's what we're looking at. The majority of the Muslims, I'm assuming, are of a very Sufic background. Whether they know it or not, but that's, if you're just looking at sheer numbers, that's all. That's what the majority of the Muslims on the ground would be, even if you count masjids. Definitely within the UK, the Brelvi community is the utmost majority, clearly dominating majority, which is a very Sufic, folkloric kind of cultural kind of Islam. But yet, and even though the US isn't as folkloric, but it's still, I'm assuming the Sufi thing is still quite strong. But online, there's an entirely different story. Online, I feel things like the Salafi da'wah is actually probably the dominating voice online. The other, even if you think about it, let's say the Salafi denomination worldwide, they wouldn't even represent, it'd be difficult to say that they are even 10% of the Muslims worldwide. I don't even believe they would be 10%. That would be a stretch to say that the Salafis are 10%. I'm assuming Salafis are probably like 5% of the Muslims. And that's generous. I'm being generous when I'm thinking 5%. I don't think Salafis are even 5% of the Muslim. Yet, if you looked at the presence online, you would think 95% of that denomination, just because they have really owned this game of social media, of being on YouTube, being on writing on forums. Even if you do research in Arabic, 9 out of every 10, if not 95 out of 100 of all the websites that will come up whenever you're searching something will always be Salafi, which is quite surprising considering that majority of the institutes in the world, like I mentioned, are not Salafi. So yeah, that's you're right. There would be, it's intriguing. There's a huge mismatch. So if you just lived online, you would assume that this is the reality. And this is why Salafis sometimes would actually believe that they're much larger than they actually are. And in some ways, it's not their fault, because when they're on these forums, they are so huge in just the availability of these forums. So they assume that they are like at least 50%, if not more. Like you'll hear some of them saying that they are the majority of the Muslims, and you'll think like, what are you even on about? Like you could take a country like Pakistan, I mean, as an example. You could take other countries and just look at how many Salafi mosques are there in the country. There would be a random little mosque in some tiny places. And then in some of the cities, they will have some, but that's it. They're not actually a tiny minority. I mean, there's much less Salafis in terms of figures than there are Shia. And look at that. You wouldn't believe that, would you? Because you wouldn't realize that the Shia are probably, 15% of the Muslims worldwide. Salafis are not even that. But through a online presence, they are like the majority, clear dominating majority. They're like, I would assume definitely over 90% of the presence online is Salafi, which, yeah, that's just, wow. It's quite, I mean, fair play to that.
Do you have like a reason why that is?
Right, that's right, that's interesting. Why is that? Right, I mean, one, I don't know, actually. That's because every reason I could think of, let's say, I could think of reasons, but one could, they could also be false positives, because you could find that in other groups as well. But then why are they not as dominant? I would assume that what you see, for whatever reason, when the internet, it's definitely associated with the internet. I mean, initially, okay, if you go pre-internet, it was associated with just having funding. Okay, so they had money. I don't think that today is the reason, but it definitely helps. But in the past, it was the reason. So initially, if you go to the 90s, in the 90s, the Salafis just had money, printed glossy material, and just shipped it everywhere. I mean, if you wrote to the Salafis, they would just send you a bunch of stuff. I was in Pakistan in a village. Yeah. This was the year 2000. And because in Pakistan, it wasn't easy to get hold of Arabic material. I mean, I used to study in Islamabad, but I would have to go to a library, and I had my own books, which were whatever they were, but it's not easy to get new material in Islamabad. Now, and this is in the year 2000, I wrote a letter. Okay, I wrote a letter, handwritten, to some, majamma, some kind of organization, charity organization. I just got some address of it in Saudi Arabia. I just wrote to them that, hi, this is who I am. I'm currently in Pakistan. I love to learn more about Islam. And I was just wondering if you could send me any books or material. They shipped an entire box full of books, obviously Salafi books, to my village. I mean, it came to a village, and they just shipped it free of charge. I got glossy books, and to be fair, I appreciated it because it gave me something to read. So in the 90s, it was to do with just money. They just had money, printing glossy material, shipping it out everywhere. If you said to them, you wanted to set up a Salafi mosque, because the people around you are just people of bid'ah, and you wrote to somebody in Saudi Arabia, most likely they would have funded you. But what happens in the mid-2000s is the rise of the internet. Now, the rise of the internet seems to be a bit more spontaneous and indigenous. I don't think that necessarily was because people were paying them or giving them money. I don't think that doesn't add up. So it just seems to be that they seem to have more of a drive than other groups. And yeah, and they just kind of like dominated the entire internet because they got there first and they just proliferated. So yeah.
Okay, because I was just wondering,
I think it's fascinating.
I was wondering how we can like change that narrative, because I agree with you. I think Salafia is like the dominant narrative online, and if there's a to change
right now,
but I'm not sure if you know.
I don't know if that can be changed, to be honest with you. I mean, I think it can be. It's not that, okay. I don't, okay, it's not a question of potential, because I think it can be, but will it be changed? I think it might be changed through things like this, like YouTube. So you might get on YouTube, I'm not anybody, because people are just recording things, putting them up. But generally, literature online still, for it to change, people have to take an interest. And the problem is the main, the non-Salafi sector, even though it's huge, it just seems to be apathetic towards this. Like, it doesn't, there's a sense of apathy. It's not interested. Like, look, you could take, for example, the largest institutes of Muslim learning throughout the Arab world that are non-Salafi. Al-Azhar. You could take Al-Azhar. It has a useless website. Yeah, it's not really helpful. It doesn't have, I mean, this is one of the most ancient, let's take the 3 most ancient Islamic universities in the world. All Sunni, all non-Salafi. Yeah, you've got Al-Azhar, you've got Qarawiyyin, and you've got Zaytuna. Not Sheikh Hamza Yusuf's, but the one in Tunis. Now, these are the ancient, some argue from the time of the Sahaba. They argue Zaytun is a continuation from Uqba, you know, Ibn Nafi and whatever. But the point is, they're at least over 1,000 years old. Now, you've got these 3 institutes. Not one of them, as Azhar is probably the most developed out of them today. It has a useless website, right? Not very, you know, it's just naff. It's not. Zaytuna doesn't even really have a website. I mean, if you go on Zaytuna, this is not Hamza Yusuf's, by the way, not to mix it up. I'm talking about the Arabic Jami' Zaytuna in Tunis. The website's just to do with, it'll just have a timetable of if you want to join the university, and it's useless. It'll probably give you the time of Salah and nothing else. Qarawiyyin, useless, nothing there. I mean, these are the most ancient. And how difficult is it? Like, think about it. For the Wizaratul Awqaf, the Ministry of Religious Affairs, all they have to do is get a bunch of young graduates, yeah, like people in their 20s, and just give them a bursary for a year. Just give them, you know, whatever it is, a bursary. And they just have to put all this stuff, and they have a year's project to put it all on their website. Make their website current. It's not difficult. It wouldn't even take, for a ministry in a government, that's not even pocket change. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Like, that's nothing for a government. Like, that kind of money, just paying a few bursaries for, like, even if they paid 10 people a bursary to completely transform the entire website into an encyclopedia, give them a 12-month project. I mean, they'll probably spend more money on that. You know, the government officials are probably spending, you know, taking that more than that much out for themselves. But yeah, but there just is an apathy. There isn't an interest to do it. Whereas the Salafis seem to be keen. So they seem to be, they want to do that. So if you take even the Sufi tariqas, which are worldwide, so widespread, but the Sufi tariqas are not keen on knowledge. Because to them, if you start encouraging knowledge, you will end up undermining their authority. So they don't usually like, and when they do promote knowledge, it's very low level. It's just like, oh, learn Riyadh al-Salihin, learn this, mashallah, here's a story about Imam Nawawi, here's a story about Imam Ghazali. They're not really interested in proper knowledge, because if you start promoting all of that, a lot of those mashayikh of the Sufiya, I hate to say, but a lot of them are not very clued up when it comes to Islamic knowledge. They're just very rudimentary. Okay, not rudimentary, but it's just above, you know, it's at best mediocre. Like, their knowledge of Islam is very mediocre. They don't know about all these fatwa and stuff. And most of the Sufis, because nobody asks them, they don't need to know it to be a Sufi shaykh. You just need to give out, do this dhikr, do that. But Salafi now, come on, his students are going to be like, oh, but what's this hadith? What's that hadith? And he has to always be, you know, on edge. But it is true, these institutes are to do with knowledge. Al-Azhar is an institute of knowledge. Zaytuna is an institute of knowledge. Qarawiyyin is an institute. They are academic institutions. They should at least have encyclopedias on their website. But maybe, let's hope. But it's been an absolute pleasure taking a look at these questions, Noor. Shukran for sharing them. All right, so shukran. You're welcome. Take care, stay blessed. Assalamu alaikum. All right, people, we've got, who have we got here? Abu Safura. All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Am I live? Hello.
You alive. Alive and
Mufti.
kicking, Abu Safura.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, Mufti.
Abu Safura.
It's
Where are you
amazing
joining
to
us
be
from?
here. Interestingly, I'm from Dhaka, Bangladesh.
You're joining us from Dhaka, Bangladesh.
I actually put the alarm clock to get up early and listen to you.
No way.
Yeah, no, for real. Mufti. Yeah, ask to use it. I would have shown my face, but I fear getting stabbed. I'll be honest with you. Anyway,
Mufti, may the Lord protect you. Amen.
Always, and if I do die a shaheed. Mufti, I wanted to ask you three, not questions, but I wanted your insights on three issues. First is to do with reason.
I thought for a moment you were going to say, I want to ask three questions. Man rabbuka wa ma dinuka. I thought, is this it? Am I in the grave? Is this the afterlife?
If you
Man Rabbi. Huh?
Had you seen my face?
Can I call a friend? Can I call a 50-50 on the answers?
Had you seen my face, you would have definitely thought I was Munkar, if not Nakir. I don't like Nakir.
I'm sure we can win them over.
I don't know. You have to really bribe them with a lot of sadaqah, etc. Do it in advance. Mufti,
yeah, go for it.
So three issues. The first is to do with reason. The next one is to do with a fiqh issue, and the third one is to do with history. The first one, you have spoken about it before, is regarding reason. Now, what if reason leads me away from faith? Which is very possible and plausible to some extent. What happens if that is the case, if one genuinely, using reason, goes away from the faith and chooses his own path? What will be his outcome on the day of... I'm not saying you know his outcome, nobody does, only Allah. But what could be his possibility?
I would be even surprised if I answered it like that. I would be like, huh? Did I know?
I'm just clarifying so that people...
Yeah, you see, look, these things are... This is the price of true faith. That Islam...
Burning in hell is a price.
No, I'm not saying burning in hell, but I'm saying the price is that people have the right to reject it.
Right.
That is like, when Allah is saying, Man sha'a falyu'min, man sha'a falyakfur. That is the price of Iman, that you have to allow people to arrive at it themselves. If they're not going to arrive at it, then okay, it's up to them. Now, as to, does that mean they are doomed? I've said before that it does not mean that they are doomed. And I feel that if a person uses his reason or her reason, then inshallah, that it can be salvific. Why not? I mean, and many scholars have kind of quoted that. They've stated, and I do mention,
Yeah, Imam Ghazali and probably Ibn Taymiyyah as well, surprisingly, held the view that, like, if you did not reject it arrogantly or something, as in knowingly did not reject it, you probably could have another chance. But here is what I wanted to know, Mufti.
Even more than that, you had Baydawi stating that a person who he clearly says uses his reason and disbelieves, and he says that yurja'afu, we still hope that person has salvation, because at the end of the day, he just did what was responsible of them.
Mufti, now, as attractive and alluring this concept sounds, to me, I absolutely love it. But the problem is, do we have anything from the Quran or even from the authentic Sunnah that would, give backing to this, serve as an evidence to this claim? Do we have, so that we find some sort of comfort in knowing that, okay, if someone is genuinely trying their best, using reason, and probably swinging away from the true path as we know it, do we have anything like that in the Quran or the Sunnah?
Yes, of course. So, first of all, let's just begin with the Hadith, which I cite often. Yeah. So the Hadith is to do with the person who is, he's about to pass away. It's a very famous Hadith. And he says to his children that when I die, that can you cremate me and scatter my ashes and do all of this. Now the question is why, and they ask him, and he says, well, because I'm afraid that Allah will otherwise take me to account, and this way I don't want to be taken to account. So they say fine. Right. And in the story it mentions sorry, I was just bringing this up.
Yeah, no problem.
So right, it does mention in the thing that Allah asks him, why did you do that? And he says, I did it because I feared you and I feared the consequence.
Right.
And Allah says, well, fine. Now he's saved, but what's interesting is the aqidah. Let's just dissect that aqidah. The aqidah was that he felt when he was telling his children to do this, he's telling his sons, Allah cannot hear him. So Allah is not all hearing. When he was telling them that, look, when I die, I want you to scatter this, that the belief that Allah is not all powerful, that he'll be able to revive him. The fact that there will be no resurrect him. The fact that there will be no resurrection, he believed that there is no akhirah for him. Like if you just take the kind of beliefs that this person had together,
right,
it is shocking. It's clearly kufr by all standards.
Mufti, I would like to interject a bit. You say, I'm not saying that this is what you profuse, but is this not a less intensity kufr, if we want to go with that word, than rejecting the concept of God itself, or worse than that, believing in a God with an elephant head, something like that? Is the intensity does it not make an interesting case?
Right, okay, I see what you're saying, but okay, so first of all, let's come into, and we'll come back to this, let's come into other religions, yeah? So okay, we want to bring, and you want to take a look at Hinduism, but first of all, has Islam spoken of other religions in this context?
Yes.
So, it has. Surah Baqarah, the famous verse 62, in Alladhina Amanu. All these people that, that if they do good deeds, that they are saved. Now, this is,
right.
And the interesting thing is people try to say that this is abrogated, they try to say.
No, they do something worse than that. I have seen it in Sahih with the Saad International. They change the grammar. They change the grammar and say those who were Jews and Christians, not are. They put the turn R into air. So this is deeply, I think, hypocritical. Sahih International does it often. Yeah, they do it in the translation so much.
But in the Quran, it's a condition. It's like man, and this is فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. I mean, it mentions this, that it's not in the past tense, it's current. So
yes,
and the commands of Allah can be abrogated, but not His promises.
Yes,
and this is a statement. It's not a promise. I mean, it's not a command here. So, okay, now coming to Hinduism, right? Okay, the question is that what about Hinduism and stuff like this, where they've got, let's say, they're worshipping idol gods and things like this. Now, look, the way Islam. First of all, there's layers to this. First of all, if they were to reason, most of these people would believe that in reason that is God. Like, I'm just being honest. Even they, in Hinduism, when they do reason, they don't believe that Ganesh or these people, elephant god, whatever, is actually God. Like, they believe that this is, yes, a manifestation, but they actually believe that God ultimately is just Brahman. But then there's different aspects of Brahman. So they would say that you've got the kind of cosmological aspect, which is Paramatma, and then you've got the God that deals with humans, which is Ishvar, that aspect of God. And then what it is God allows this system of three. So you can have Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and these three create this cycle of life and destruction. And they reincarnate as these other lesser gods like Ram and all these other people. And then you've got mythologies like an elephant head, he cuts this head off, puts an elephant head and does all of this. Now, yes, they practice that as superstition. They practice that as kind of false beliefs. But even if they were to reason over it, I doubt that they would, in their reason, actually agree that this particular statue over here is actually the creator of the universe. I don't think anybody would actually.
No, they don't. And I think this is one of the faults of the Muslims, is that we project our concept of theology to other faiths. I've noticed it quite often, especially debates with Christians. Take the issue of Sharia. Muslims, what they will do is they would go back to Deuteronomy, or let's say Genesis, Leviticus. They'll bring up and say, oh, look, your Bible says this. The Christian does not care what the Bible says. His way of looking into Christianity is different. This is one of the problems of Salafiyah. I myself am a Salafi, interestingly.
Sure.
This is one of the reasons I don't want to show my face.
No, but what's interesting is that the Salafiyah, the Ahlul Hadith of the Indian subcontinent, they had a tradition that was so enlightened, but it wasn't followed by the other Ahl Hadith. But so I often, when I quote my tafsir and I quote Maulana Abdul Karim al-Athari, he was Salafi, and his teacher, Inayatullah, they were Salafi, but they were incredibly enlightened.
They actually were. And Mufti, you know what? In defense of the Salafiyah, one of the greatest, I heard your discussion with News Notes. It was great, but I think you could not find out the reason why it was such a success. Many people attribute it to petrodollar, which may have been true, right? Like you said, pre-90s. But Mufti, what it really comes down to is the Salafiyah movement, as absurd as it may seem to many people, is an amazing empowerment movement. I'll tell you how. Look, the concept of the Quran and the Sunnah and literalism. What exactly do you need? All the skill that you do need is you need to be able. And it's not just the simplicity. Look, Mufti, all the skills you need is you need to be able to read. Nobody needs that now. You can just watch videos. But the other thing, once you have the backing of the Quran and the Sunnah, you can go on an iconoclastic mission. Which Mufti, let us say there's a guy who is 15 years of age. Now, Mufti, for example, you've got Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, you've got the Cambridge Muslim Academy, who you've got there, Timothy, what's his name? The guy with fancy accent. I forgot his name. Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad. See, these people, like we've got the Zaytuna Institute, and they give great reasonings, they give great lectures, but there's something missing. Every statement they make is not backed up with a reference. Like, I'm not saying there is no reference, but they do not quote the reference.
Very right. So it's not empowering, is it?
It's not empowering because, and I have heard you said it. I've heard you say that, the Salafiyah says, yes, we know Imam Malik says this. But on the other hand, you have Rasulullah saying this, which one are you going to take? And you reiterated that, what if instead of saying Imam Malik says this, how about we say, this is what Imam Malik thinks Rasulullah may have said or was the Sunnah? This, I think there's a tactical problem. I really think, and Mufti, you know what? There is a way you can really challenge the Salafi. And I have written to you on Instagram, you did not get back to me. I'm really upset. Please do get back to me.
I don't know what okay, yeah. When we finish this, send another message and I'll check for, because I know you don't want to share the name of it. So
yeah, okay.
Just send a message and I'll look out for new messages. Yeah.
All right, Mufti. Is Mufti, I watched your discussion with Dr. Mehdi Hassan. It was amazing. It was brilliant. You brought up, and here I come with my second, not question, I'll say issue, is to do with history, or probably it was the third one. The concept, not the concept, but the history of Imam Shafi and Imam al-Hanbal, not Imam, Imam Ibn Hanbal. They're amazing Imams, great people, great personalities, but they were not from the Salaf. They're not from the Salaf as-Salihin. And the reason the Salafi movement, it gets such empowerment is we're going back to the righteous predecessors. But it really ends with Imam Malik, really. The generation of Imam Malik, then what's his name, Abdul Razak as-San'ani, he had some really blasphemous view. The Salafis would think if you quoted the views without his name of San'ani, they would get heart attacks. Oh, no,
which San'ani is recent famous San'ani, or are we talking?
No,
you're not talking about the early.
I'm talking about the early one. Abdul Razak. No.
Abdul Razak al-San'ani.
Yes, Abdul Razak al-San'ani. Yes, Imam Muhammad's teacher. Yes, that is the guy. Look, Mufti, the thing is, what if we reclaim the tag of Salafism? Because I heard that discussion, and you said that the modern Salafiyya, it's basically, even though they like to say that we don't want any madhab, but what they're really doing is they're merging the aqidah of Imam Ibn Hanbal, whom I love, by the way. I don't agree with him completely, but I love him. And the fiqh of Imam Shafi, they're merging it together. They cook it up, and there you go, the Salafiyya movement. I think if we go back and say to them, Mufti, look, I love this really. Imam Malik has the golden chain. He brings the hadith in the golden chain and rejects it. We don't know. We don't care what it says. I don't see it among the practice amongst the people. What if this was brought to their attention? Look, I know, yes, you love the Salaf, but the Salaf did not view the hadith the way you view the hadith. I mean, Imam Malik rejected.
That is what we generally say to them. This is the argument. But you see, the reason I agree with you that the reason why it's empowering for the masses is because the Salafiyya thing is empowering. Because what you're doing, you see, this thing, like with the madhabs, like let's say you're going to Imam Malik, you're looking at reason, you're showing this, it requires like reason, it requires comprehension, it requires, it's not like saying here's a hammer and let's go and start. Whereas with the Salafis, all you do is you say to them, look, here's a book of hadith, it's called Sahih Bukhari, just read through it, and keeping in mind that the backdrop is non-Salafi and it's going to clash. So whoever disagrees with you, quote this and then ask them to bring their evidences. Now, because most people won't be, if they do bring evidences, it's going to be a theory, which in a simple head-on clash doesn't sound like, because one person's going to say, look, it's like how you said a moment ago, like one person's going to say, look, here's a hadith in Bukhari, and you're going to say, oh, but Imam Abu Hanifa said this, and they're going to say, but I'm bringing the Prophet, you're bringing this. Now, to the public, that person wins. So that is true from a very low level. I agree with you that this is why, and you're right. Now, it's not the, it's good that you mentioned this because it resurfaces. That is definitely one of the reasons why the Salafi Da'wah spread like wildfire wherever it did. Because
Yeah, it was faster than, if the string theory, if the vibration, you increase it by 2 times, it spread faster than that. Which, what it results in is 2 things. And I have seen it so many times. Apostasy or extremism. There is no middle ground, really. I have seen, Mufti, I have had shit ton of, I'm sorry for using the word. I have had so many friends who got into the whole Salafi thing, including myself, with tremendous passion.
Yeah.
And then some started sympathizing with mumbo jumbo people. The others, they went full on apostasy, like brutal apostasy. One thing is,
because this, it's not what happens is, this empowering thing. It empowers people who have a nature to want, like sometimes people, and this isn't just to do with religion, but sometimes people generally, they want to lash out at things. Like they don't like certain things, or they the kind of person who's very like, just wants to tell people off. And don't get me wrong, everybody can have that side to them. But with this da'wah, you now have a license of saying, Qala Allah wa qala Rasuluh. Now, and you hammer and smash, this iconoclasm, you go around this iconoclastic movement, smashing the idols of people. Now, this madhab, that madhab, but what it does is it fuels this easy for a moment. Like, in fact, it'll bring huge momentum. But as you need to grow, as you need to go to the next layer, this thing, it burns out, and it burns out so rapidly because it leaves this kind of bitter temperament. You're just always trying to tell
people. So what they do, and I've seen it so much, when something does not go hand in hand with their innate nature, with their innate morality, they, and this is very interesting, I've seen it so many times, they do a psychological hypnosis on themselves and chase their concept of morality. You see this with that Zindiq, Haqiqat Jew. You see this a lot. He lies all the time. I've actually went back to the texts of the claims he makes, and I don't find them. Women praying in, you did address it, women praying in closets. Then he brings another video where, it's interesting. He names a lot of Malay. He's like, we love our tradition. We love Imam Malik, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi. He can't even name them right. Ghazali, Ibn Taymiyyah. If you really bring some of their fatwa, like Ibn Taymiyyah had a fatwa that says women can lead men in prayer, he'll get a heart attack. He'll get a heart attack, right? His heart will come out of his tits, to be honest. That's what's going to happen.
These people are not, they're not that, they don't have that depth of knowledge. Like, they're not actually read like that. Yeah, it's shallow reading. So,
it's basically romanticism, a false romanticism. For fuck's sake, I'm sorry, Mufti, grow up.
I absolutely agree with you, what you're saying. That, look, it is, but because of that empowering element, it gives you a license to tell people off. And what greater license than to say, look, who's rubber stamped it? God has. God and the Prophet. Where did the Prophet? It's simple, isn't it? This is why I said the simplicity. That, look, it's in Bukhari, it's in this book, and it's here. Allah, and this is it, and this is what our sheikhs have told us. But you're right. With age, as a person, if they live through it a few decades, let's say, it comes to a horrible
decade. Mufti, you can't tolerate it for 5 years. I'm not even kidding. Yeah. That is what I see. The other thing is, Mufti, they say, and I said it myself as well, let us get rid of the clergy. So what they do is everybody becomes the clergy. That is what it is. You get rid of the clergy, you become the clergy.
Yeah. It's that thing, isn't it? That beware when you fight monsters, lest you become one. And this is Nietzsche saying this, because what they did was to wanting to replace madhabs, wanting to replace these clergymen, and all they did is just replace it with a new, West developed madhab, and
Yeah,
just a madhabun khamis, but it's so underdeveloped.
Yeah, a projection of this, like if you were to draw it into a fantasy scenario, it would be like the Ya'juj and Ma'juj concept of Yasir al-Qadhi. We got zombies, take over, become that. And that's just what it's going to become. I've taken a lot of your time. I just have one more issue. No, I've got one more issue. Mufti, you have said that the Hadith punishment can change with times, with the authority of Abu Qasim al-Burzali, which is fine. But I want to know, Mufti, what was his reasoning? What was his reasoning from the Quran and the Sunnah that would give him such a view? Because, look, you can say that he had this view, which is fine. I have nothing against it. But what is the reference and authority?
They argue that this was what the Sharia mandates. Now, they argue this based on, they will look at, so for example, certain ahadith, they will quote them. So they will quote a hadith where the Prophet will say about letting someone off. They will quote these hadiths like, so for example, there's a hadith about the person coming to the Prophet saying, I've done zina. And the Prophet says, well, have you prayed? And he says, yeah. And then he says, well, okay, that's so they will quote. There's another hadith in the Musnad where they're going to punish someone for a rajam, and he runs away. Lottery, but this one, the person runs away, but they catch him. And then they tell the Prophet that he ran away, but we caught him and we did this to him. And the Prophet says that, Halla taraktumuhu, if only you let him go, and fayatubu Allahu alayhi, that he would have had his tawbah and Allah would have returned to him. Like, why? So they take and this thing like the lottery thing or different things, and what they say is that this shows that the asl was the maqasid, it was the maqsad, and as that changes with the day and age, you can change it, because if, like, think about it, if tawbah can drop the hudud, then فما بالك, because according to the qawl al-qadim of the Shafi'is and according to Imam Ahmad, one riwayah, and according to this hadith, that the Prophet saying, look, if he did tawbah, why did you punish him? And that was in zina. So they're saying if tawbah can drop a had, and then what about changing it? And they use by the way, they use other examples as well, where somebody is made to they're made to pay for something as a punishment, to show that, look, the hudud, a punishment can change to monetary punishment. So they give these kind of examples, but this is all in the kind of background to the philosophy. Yeah.
But Mufti, does it not go against the clear verse of the Quran, which they often quote, and I have this in my mind as well, that anyone who, the verse, anyone who rules other than Allah is either fasiq or a kafir or something. How do you interpret that verse in that case?
Sure. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Yes, but this verse is speaking primarily about Bani Israel, isn't it? It's Allah saying to them. It's not actually, this verse isn't actually primarily to the Muslims. It's actually speaking about, look, we gave Moses this, and we gave them this, and this, and whosoever does not judge by what God. It was trying to show that, look how these people had behaved. Now, it was not trying to, you see, what's interesting is the Jewish, the kind of echoing of the Jewish corruption, let's say, if we call it that, or misguidance in the Quran, isn't about them changing the laws necessarily. It's about the arrogance, and to do with they did this based on maqasid, or they had this. It was to do with arrogance and stubbornness that they adhere to certain things. So
Yeah, they basically had this, and you see this a lot among the Salafi as well, is that our shit does not smell attitude. When they do it, it's okay. If that guy does, then he's a mudalli. These are ahlu dalala. The other term, my favorite one, I use this a lot. Ahlu zanadiqa. Yeah, they do this a lot. Yeah, so that is the reasoning then, that we do
and
not
you have
understand.
to understand something, that look, this when Allah says, because He's telling us that there's different laws for different communities, so we understand from this, it's not the law per se that's existed from time immemorial, because it's changed all the time. So alcohol was permissible for different people, it's become impermissible here. So it's not alcohol per se. Now what is it that God is talking about? You see, the ahkamullah, man lam yahkum bima anzal Allah, this sultan, this thing that Allah is speaking about, is having law and order, because humanity can't prosper without law and order. Having a lawless society, those people are transgressors. But this is very different. This is very different to saying we've got a lawful society, but we're just debating, can this particular law match this maqsad, or should it kind of manifest in a different way? We're not talking about lawlessness. Nobody is going to lawlessness. That would be absolute. And kufr,
and I think
that would be.
And I think Mufti can add another verse to it. If you go towards the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, you actually see Allah says, when there is a situation of contract, write it down. No, it's a huge problem, because nobody writes down contracts that much anymore. Like, if you're going to buy something online, you don't really take a paper and write it. You don't do that. But the Quran says explicitly, and the language is actually assertive, which is interesting. It says, do it.
Write it.
So I think,
and take witnesses and do this.
No, not writing. Is it? I think Shafi actually gave a very ridiculous fatwa, which says that if you buy something, give a khutbah and right. That was okay.
Imam Shafi, Bechara wasn't really a tradesman, was he? This is why it's interesting that those who were tradesmen never said, like Imam Abu Hanifa was a businessman. He was never, Imam Malik was a businessman. They were just chilled. Imam Shafi, who was not a businessman, and he actually suffered, unfortunately, from poverty and stuff, he actually had really strict trading rules. It's quite ironic, actually.
Mufti, this actually shows that we really do need to go back to the Salaf, because Salaf were not weird people, to be honest. They were fun people.
I love that, going back to them. And if you go to the Tabi'een as well, you find them very open-minded. They're not like this.
In fact, Mufti is so open-minded. I actually found out that the Sahaba actually learned Greek when they moved out. Like, let's say when they went to Syria, they would learn Greek, which is, as a Bengali, as a Bengali, which is a huge thing for me, because I don't know if you know this, but in the 50s, we had, like, when we were Pakistan, we had this thing, like, officially it was that you have to speak Urdu. Now, I'm not dissing on Urdu, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying because they have the Arabic script, they had the Arabic script, they would associate it with Arabic, and they made the language holy. And I do find Arabic amazing. It's probably one of my favorite languages. But the thing is, Mufti, what they would do is otherize the other languages. Like, you speak Bengali, you're a Hindu. You're a Hindu, stuff like that. And you see this in the Middle East as well. Like, in Iran, let's take in Iran, if you speak proper Persian, like if you limit the words of Arabic, instantly you become a Zoroastrian. You must Jews. No, you must, fuck up your Arabic to be a Muslim.
Oh, it's true. I agree with you, and I think that's a shame. You know what that is? It's a sign of insecurity. That
it is.
People, Allah says that وَفِي اخْتِلَافِ أَلْوَانِكُمْ وَأَلْسِنَتِكُمْ, there's ayat. This, the fact that you have different tongues and different languages and you're different. this is a sign that it all points back to one God. Like they are signs, manifestations of the divine. And people become so insecure that they try to banner the languages, they try to banner the... that's
they do
utterly,
it with the Kurdish.
utterly...
They do it with the
Kurdish was a fine example, as well. Current example.
And then they Mufti, these things make people hate Islam for no reason. Take North Africa.
Yeah, exactly.
North Africa, yes, they have Arab people, but they're not really Arabs. Now, what happens is you come and say, speak Arabic, or you're something else, like you're mumbo jumbo something. Then they translate that.
They've got this whole thing going on over there with the Amazigh. This is why the Amazigh are so annoyed, because these people, why are they blocking out? Because you see, the way I say is that, look, my understanding, the way I say things is, look, if you want Arabic as the primary language, have it, but don't promote. If people want to promote their cultures, let them promote them. Don't feel insecure. Don't feel that, oh my God, if people start speaking Amazigh, everybody's going to forget Arabic. No, they're not. And don't think that, because these people are Kurdish, if they speak Kurdish, no, so what? Let them celebrate it. It's not. It's the irony is by stamping down on it, the reaction is so harsh because those people hate it.
It's so disgusting, because even I remember, Mufti, I actually, back in my hardcore days, I struggled with the verses that said, we've divided you into nations and tribes. You know what my ijtihad was? My ijtihad was, okay, since the tribes and nations are different, our mission is more difficult to make it into one. That is how, the mind thinks. The reading says it's different, but it translates in your mind, it's different, try to make it one. That's what it messes it all up. I think
totally agree.
And Mufti, the reaction. See, Mufti, one thing I have realized dealing with apostates, etc. These people, to be honest, they're not uneducated people. These are not people ignorant of Islam. In fact, the ignorant ones are the ones that will have you believe that grow up becoming Abdul Bukhari. But these people, what happens is...
I often say that atheists are more concerned with God than people of religion, because some of them become obsessed to that extent with God.
They do, and the theological discussions they have. Here's the thing with the agnostics, or let's say the atheists. They have more theological discussions than any theological in Muslim history. And to be honest, Muslims have never been that interested in theology. Some have, but in general, our tradition is theology, leave that aside. Ours is clear. So I have noticed it. Yeah. But the thing is, Mufti, if you lie to them, that's one thing. If someone grows up with lies, you can refute it. Oh, what you knew, it was wrong. Done. Job done. Sure. Easy. But if the lies are intertwined, or sprinkle bits of truth in them, like let's say you sprinkle bits of Ibn Ishaq on someone's idea of the Prophet, how do you refute it? You now have to go into source criticism, which is another problem we have, is you can't criticize the sources, you must worship them 10 times a day, not 5, 10. Yeah, I think
that's so well said. It's true. And I find sorry, carry on.
And Mufti, last thing, I swear to you, this is the absolute last thing. You can cut me off after that. Mufti, can you elaborate? I'll try to get back next month again. Please do take me up. Mufti, can you end with history of Imam Shafi, as in he was a Maliki all his life, and then probably you can even say Hanafi because he studied under Shaybani or Abu Yusuf. I don't remember. What happens later? But you said that it's because he has a crisis of he does not belong anywhere. He does not have a land attached to himself. But can you go into a little bit of details as you went? What made him truly take 180-degree views 3 times, not 2, because 2 would be going back at the same time. 3 times. Why does he do it?
I think Right, okay. There's a number of things. Now, I have got some videos where I'm saying certain things and I'm discussing them about Imam Shafi in the discussions. I've got one.
Mufti, you don't
a couple of
you don't go into detail. Mufti, I've actually scanned for that, but you don't go into that much details. Can you?
So this where I'm
do
speaking about. Yeah, there's one where I'm speaking to Mufti Muntasir, and we speak about the rivalry between Imam Shafi. It's on YouTube as well. It's about 3 years old, 4 years old. So in that as well, I do go into this in some detail. You see, the truth is that there's going to be many issues. It's not going to be like just one issue that triggers someone. Like there's going to be a whole kind of, this cascade of things going on. Now, I do think it was identity as well, but I feel the identity was triggered, like what I mentioned with Mufti Muntasir. It was the initial factor was the Malikis attacking him. Now, what happened is I don't think he expected that. So when he goes back to Egypt, the Malikis kind of belittle him. So and he feels that he has no sense of belonging, because think about it. It's like if I dedicate my life to something and now I go into a place where I realize that I'm just a nobody. Like these people, like I don't count. Like it's very painful. It's not a. So what it did is that could either mean that you try to say I am somebody, and why are you somebody? Because he can't back it up through the Maliki sources. That's not going to happen, because he only was with Imam Malik a short amount of time. Now, there's no point saying he was Hanafi. Even when he was with Muhammad Shaybani, he used to consider himself Maliki. So the other way is either you just retreat and give up, or he had this kind of explosion of thought and analysis, and he felt that, look, well, actually, you know what, thinking about it, why do we need to have this allegiance to Imam Malik? Like, why not shift it to Isnad? Why do I need to be dependent on Medina? Why do I need to be dependent on Kufa? And so why not objectify the Isnad? And it's a great project. And to be fair, I think it is in many ways testimony to his, to his genius to be able to do that. Although I disagree with the concept, but the fact that he managed to fight back this thing and set up, in its aftermath, an entire.
It was a great accomplishment. Like if you look at the Risala, it's an amazing thing.
It was great. I salute it. Yeah.
How did this?
I mean, I don't agree with his thing, but I salute his accomplishment. Yeah.
He had some wacky views, female genitalia mutilation.
Yeah. I mean, no, Imam Shafi, I have said, and people have got offended, I do feel that he was kind of, I'm assuming, would have been probably autistic, but just based on some of his rulings, I'm guessing that. But people, obviously, when I said that, people got offended.
on the discussion you had with Dr. Mehdi Hassan, I actually looked every bit of the internet to look for the twin sister thing. When he marries the Siamese twin, let's find out.
That's in Qadiyat's Tartib al-Madarik.
Does he go into detail? So does he go into the details of it?
Like he just mentions that story. He mentions that details that I highlight. That he mentions that he did this, and then he kind of divorced her afterwards, and he has this brief discussion on whether that was right or wrong.
Mufti, you know what? I think scholars are not that honest. By honest, I mean they know these things exist. Like they will say, we grew up hearing that, the differences are just its and bits. They did not really have differences. They were great people. I mean, look, As-Sunnah Tansukh al-Quran. This is ridiculous stuff. This is the reason why they reconcile the most absurdly, clearly, it's so contradictory. Forget the Christians, if another sect of Muslims did it, you would go full on Ahl al-Bidah on them. But when it happens to you,
are we speaking specifically about that issue, or are you saying in general about Siamese twins?
No. In general, and I'm talking about the concept of where he says as-sunnah and suqa al-Quran. That one, that
Oh, that the Sunnah
as,
abrogates the Quran. Yeah. I mean, this is
is so absurd.
Shafi'i kind of thinking. But I feel that that's what happens when you become so, this is why I said about I feel the autism, that when you become so set on something which is the isnad, and keeping in mind that Imam Shafi was not from the real muhaddithin anyway, but
he was not. He actually said, I don't know much about it.
Yeah, he said, I don't know much about hadith. He says bid'ati musja and whatever. But when you set your mind on something and it's monotracked, then everything else becomes compromised by that. Abu Safur, I think we better wrap this up. It's been going on. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure. But
do respond back to me on Instagram. Take care, Mufti.
Okay, take care. Assalamu alaikum. Right. Whoa. That's been really, wow. Went on for so long, but so many different amazing discussions. Gotta say, did love the accent. Oh, I should have said it whilst Abu Safura was there. Totally love the accent. You're doing it, Abu Safura. Guys, we gotta wrap this up. It's been going on. Whoa, it's come over 2 hours, 45 minutes. You know what? I'll take a quick meet and greet from. We've got Imran Khan. You're doing it, Imi. How you doing, man? How you doing? Are you there? What's going on?
I'm here, Mufti Saab. Assalamu alaikum.
What's going on? Wa alaikum assalam. What are you doing? What's going on? I'm good. I'm good. Are you creating mayhem over there in New York?
The mayhem's created. It doesn't even need us anymore. The stories we hear nowadays in the news, it's just unbelievable. We had a governor in Michigan, 13 people try to kidnap her. A governor.
What the hell? Whoa! America's just the Wild West, man.
Mufti, I don't want to hold you too long. I know this has been going on for a long time, and you have a couple other people. But I just had one question. We're reading this book in our book club. It's called The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. I don't know if you've read it.
Oh, right. I think I've got it on my list, but I've not read it. Yeah, Righteous Mind. Yeah.
And we were discussing morality, and one of the points, like some people were saying, and you just actually interesting. You came up in your Monday night, this previous Monday night as well, and some people were saying that our morality comes from Islam. And you talked about the
that's not true, yeah.
So
it's not true that yeah.
In that book, though, he brings up a point where he says that, like in India, they asked, there's a husband. It's part of a study. So this husband, he warned his wife that if you go out to the theater with some other guy, I'm gonna beat you silly. And so they took participants and they asked them in India, what do you think about that? And everybody said, that's fine. That's that's their agreement, and that's fine. And they asked people in the West, is that okay? And in the West, they were all just like, no, that's really wrong. And that raises a question. The question is that, if we believe morality is, a fitra thing, that's the social conscience. But what happens when, in a society, when that social conscience gets altered, like in India, where they're saying that it's okay to beat your wife in that instance, or in Hitler, in Germany, Nazi Germany, or even now in Trump's America? How do we relate those two, basically?
Yeah, you see, it's not that, right? So, in my understanding, I love when people, they just write that in the comments. They go, here comes, in my understanding, I feel. They go, we don't want to know, who gives a damn what you feel. Tell us what Allah said, what Allah feels. I'm like thinking, huh? Right, so you see, this is how I understand this, that morality is there's like a very base structure, whether you want to call it an instinct, whether you want to call it a base, we have that. So we just have a core base. It's agile and it's to be built on. How we build on it, my theory for that, you're doing it, is that you trying to first of all fix up your hair to get ready to come on. You're like, quickly, cap. All right. You know, remove the tissue now. Right. So you see, so that's so there's this base, or like an instinct that we have. And I feel that instinct is very primordial. It's very primitive. So it's just based on things like what it is we can recognize harm, and then we have the concept of empathy. It's something like that. That's it. Like it's something very base. So we know what pain is like, and we obviously can recognize, we because of empathy, we feel that, oh, that should be averted, like this harm. But what kind of, obviously at a great level, like screaming, crying, that kind of stuff, we recognize that. But the rest of how society should work, I feel that what happens is there's a socialization process. I also have another little tweak to it. I feel that there is this thing called a collective consciousness.
Right.
Now, I feel that the collective consciousness at a subliminal level has a kind of bidirectionality to it. But I don't feel that's the main thing. I feel that's just a nuance. That's like a layer that it plays into it. But I feel generally our society, we pick things up, like what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're understanding. And then this collective consciousness does feed into that as well. Now, right, you see, now when you mentioned, so that means in different parts of the world, people will have a different outlook on morality. I feel that that is true, although they would agree on fundamentals. But the way that manifests would be shaped by the way their society, it just becomes normal for them. So, for example, like if people will recognize that harm is wrong.
Right.
Yeah. Now, however, in India, like the example you gave, they will think that, oh, it's more harmful to our honor and to our name that my wife is seen with another man. Therefore, because that harm is so great, as a punishment, slapping her is adequate as a response.
Okay.
Now, or beating her up is adequate because it justifies that it's commensurate, because this is such a terrible harm she's done. In this society, you see that concept of this kind of tribal, or this, okay, it's not tribal in India, but this familial family honor, the name of the family, the name of the caste, or the name of that doesn't exist as a social construct here. So people are primarily individuals.
Right.
So, okay, so he's seeing the wife is going off with another guy to a cinema. Now, it's offending just me. Like, okay, the person is being offended. And it's not offending my familial kind of honor here. There isn't no kind of, I've got to do this for the parampara, or the sake of the whole thing. So here it's just me. And people here do react as well. Like they will, out of a reaction, they will do some things. Sometimes you do get these kind of acts of violence in the West as well. But here they do recognize deep down, okay, I've recognized you're a free person. You have the right to do it. But I feel kind of betrayed that you did this. And I'm not saying, with a cool mind, it's not that they would think this is right to do, because they would feel that you have your freedoms, I have my freedom. But this was just an act of passion, or crimes of passion, what they would say, or a rage. It blinded me as a blinding rage. So yeah, so I think it's like the social stories we have will sometimes give layers to where to prioritize, where to place something. So that's what it is. So I think if the social story changes around you, you will kind of change. And I think this is an interesting one, because we've had this discussion amongst sometimes friends, and I've said that, you see, it's interesting that I think on certain occasions people will do certain things, not even these acts of anger and these acts of violence, not they want to, but they feel they have to, otherwise they're not seen as man enough. Like, so it's because we had like this discussion once that, right? Yeah, exactly, this ghaira. So we had this discussion once that, oh, if a person's partner cheats, what would they do? Right. And even though it's seen as, in Muslim societies, it's definitely, and in Eastern societies, more forgiving to the man to do that. But we, in this particular discussion, we're speaking about the woman cheating. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that people were saying, well, look, oh, you know, oh my God, you'd never tolerate that, or this would be unacceptable. And these are very open-minded kind of people, guys that are saying this. They're not like kind of, and the interesting thing is, I said, yeah, but like, let's be honest, like if the guy's cheating, you know, you'd be like, yeah, well, you know, come on, you know, you'd be expect it to be, yeah, you'd be like, yeah, well, you know, and let's just say what, you know, if she did do this, wouldn't it be, because my point was that, wouldn't you place more of a focus on the value? Like, okay, if the relationship didn't mean much to you anyway, or it just was okay, then you might be like, oh, you know what, nah, I'm not this, and it'll be over. But imagine you really did, that relationship with that person meant a lot to you. Would this incident mean that it's an absolute, it's a no deal, like the whole thing is, it's an absolute deal breaker? Or could you be like, could this be something you could work beyond? So I said, well, why couldn't you work beyond it? Like, I don't see. So we're having this discussion, and I was saying that I think on many occasions people are actually more so, like, not more so, but on several occasions they're doing this because they feel embarrassed of, because it's the not embarrassed, because they feel it's the expectation that, you know, like, what kind of a man would I be if I tolerated that? Right. So there's more a societal pressure and expectation that, because, you know, somebody said, like, because if I didn't, then I'd just be a simp. You know, I'd just be this. So do you see, whereas because for the female, there isn't that cultural kind of expectation. I mean, it's there as well, but it's not in the same way. But for the man, it's like, you're not a real man at the end of the day. So, you know, you're a simp then. So a person almost out of, and it's interesting that then one of them said, and this kind of proved my point, because one of them said, because I said, look, let's say then, okay, this is when we play hypotheticals. I said, like, okay, let's say that your partner, whatever, like, let's say she did have an affair, but things, you really do like her, do appreciate her. Let's say you are in this, you don't want to really lose her. Would you rather not know? Like, imagine you could have, I know it's a bit of an ironic hypothetical, because to have the choice you already know, but let's say you could have this choice. Would you rather not know? And so, or what, you know, how would that be? So one of them said, yeah, I mean, in that case, I'd rather not know. And it's, so that kind of proves my point. And I said, because if you like, know, well, then I won't tell. because the point is that if you knew, you feel you have to act. Because if you don't, like, you feel this compulsion that I have to then act out. So yeah, I find these discussions interesting, but the whole thing tying into morality, I do feel that it's, because look, morality exists at some level. It exists in primates. It exists out there in the animal kingdom at a very low level. And we obviously have it developed as humans. So, but is it true that we only get it from religion? No, I mean, sorry, we don't get, like, religion will just inform us of certain things that we might shape. Right. But really, really, because you have to remember that, morality, when people say morality, they expand into so many things. It's not just at a simple level anymore. They're going to say, well, okay, don't do it like this, don't do it like, there's all these permutations. So religion will inform certain things. Okay, a nikah here is not permissible. It's not like, and some intricacies you might have as a religious thing. But otherwise, it's not religion generally would conform to human understanding of what is right and wrong. It wouldn't be the other way around.
It's interesting you brought that up. Actually, one of the things in the book was one of the examples Jonathan Haidt gives is about a brother and sister who just for the fun of it want to have protected, relations.
Incest. The hillbillies.
And so some people in our book club were saying, see, it's only Islam that tells us.
Sweet Alabama. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, you see, it's interesting that this thing, incest, is an interesting case study because it is unnatural for the most part. Given a choice, it would, even in animals, they just tend, you're not drawn sexually to that close. When there's that layer of proximity, you naturally, and people call it the Westermarck effect or whatever in psychology, but you're not drawn to that person. And there's been studies, in the book, The Third Chimpanzee, there's a whole section dedicated to when they did this study with mice and where they got siblings or they got, it's interesting how even when they were separated, the mice would not mount those. That's the technical word there. Not just being creative, not just being imaginative. They wouldn't mount them. Right. So it's interesting. So, but you see, what's fascinating is there's people, they've had these discussions. Should there be laws around this then?
Right.
Now, I've said that that's interesting because I don't really think there should be laws, because I think human beings wouldn't do that anyway. It's not like, it's like saying there shouldn't be a law that you can't eat crap. I'm just saying, like, you would have an aversion to eat crap, like you human beings have an aversion to it. Like you wouldn't just like eat it, even if a person served it to you in a gold plate, you wouldn't really eat it. That doesn't mean there needs to be a law that if you ate it, then we're going to send you to prison. I think personally, because I think that was a different discussion, should governments get involved in morality? And I don't think governments generally should. I don't think it's to talk about that. I don't think it's the government's job to be speaking about morality. I think the government should be there for policies, for laws, but not for morality. And so this is an interesting discussion. I think it overlaps. Like incest is a good example that morally, I feel it's clear that it's wrong. Even animals don't do it, and people, for the most part, would be disgusted by it. Even creatures would be disgusted by it. So, but should there be laws to enforce it, as in to say, like you gave some example of a brother and sister doing that? Should they be should taxpayers' money be spent on punishing people to do that who decided to violate, let's say, what most species, including humans, would consider to be, disgusting? I don't think taxpayers' money should go on, punishing people. It's like if a person keeps eating his own snot, it's not like you shouldn't have to be paying tax to punish that person. I mean, that's just like
they have offspring that are little, like, and then
until you have like and then you have the Hills of Eyes part 3.
But would you agree? So then, a religion, would you say that, like Islam, would you say that it teaches us the basic morality that we naturally have in ourselves?
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah. So Islam affirms that we have this base thing, which I would call the fitrah.
Right.
We have that. And Islam gives you guidelines, but then you see, this is it. This is where people disagree with me, some people, because I would say that Islam then mandates that certain things reflect your own day and age. So even though they would agree with me in that, generally speaking, but they would disagree on certain things like punishments. So the day and age has changed. So in the past, when there was no police, there was no laws in the land, you had to, Islam was strict about having law and order, because humanity can only prosper if there's law and order. So to have, you have to sometimes have strong deterrence, because catching people and it's not easy, you see. So whereas now there's a rigid policing system, and there's, you know, so much, in fact sometimes I think there's too many rules, and so would the punishments be this harsh now when catching people is a lot easier and you've got all of these? And no, I don't think, you know, these punishments would be that harsh now, because there's a level of societal responsibility. So yeah.
Gotcha. Well,
cool.
Yeah, thank you so much. And
Well,
you know we love
it's
you.
been shukran, man. Right back at you. Take care, man. Stay blessed. Much love.
We hope to meet you again soon, inshallah.
Of course, man. Come down, man. Come down. Don't worry about the lockdown. Come down. Right. So cool, man. Take care. A pleasure as always, Imran. Stay blessed. Much love. Assalamu alaikum. People, it's gone over 3 hours, so I'm going to wrap this up. I'm ever so sorry for those of you that waited and we couldn't really chat. It's been a pleasure as always. Do reach out to me. I am on my usual platforms, but Instagram is a good one that I do respond to quite regularly when I can. I know there's another box, and sometimes, you know, I do try and chase it up, but Instagram is a good place. You can otherwise on Facebook Messenger as well. And if you really want to get my attention, then you can just go to Patreon. But other than that, guys, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Much love. I really appreciate it. Seriously, you guys, kamal karte ho yaar, kamal karte ho. You guys, you're doing it, man. That's all I'm going to say. Take very good care of yourselves. Remember me in a kind dua. Remember, people, the deen is one about people. So if you don't, you know, the rituals, everything is good. It has its place, but it's about people. So if you can do a small, kind act of charity, that's all it takes. Just a kind little actual act to actually benefit someone out there. You know, you see someone poor, you see someone struggling, you see someone, whatever in your capacity, that's, if you can do that, you are well on your way to, inshallah, eternal bliss and happiness. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.